And we are live on our pre-show for the N10-008 Network Plus study group. We got a lot to do today. We've got all questions in the first hour that I will be asking you. And then in the second hour, I'll open up the chat room for Q&A. This is the pre-show. We got about 10 minutes before we get started. There's our clock. Top of the hours when we get started. You're welcome, if you're watching on the replay, to fast forward or hang out with us here in the live stream. Let's see if I can get everything the way I'd like it to be here. I think we're in pretty good shape. We're shooting a lot of video right now, so the studio effectively is identical every day. So setting this up has been kind of easy. We just sort of turn the button and everything turned on. So that's nice. That works out. Hey, chat room. Hey, everybody. Hey, DC and Missouri and other folks joining in. All Network Plus today. Plenty of Network Plus. We got a lot going on. I mentioned we're shooting video pretty much every day. Won't be shooting today because we're doing this, but every other day when you're not here, we shoot more video. So there's plenty to shoot. I'm just sitting here in a chair. You check in the morning, I'm still sitting in this chair. Check in the evening, I'm still sitting in this chair. So we're shooting lots of video, but we're putting out lots of video. So if you aren't subscribed to our channel, then you don't even realize that we're putting out lots and lots and lots of videos, and many more to come. We're well underway right now with the latest A+, so that's good. Hey, chat room. Hey, San Antonio and Saudi and Myrtle Beach, South Carolina and Virginia. And we've got New York and Toronto, folks in Canada checking in. Thanks for being here. We've got Maryland, my Maryland. I got Cleveland. Welcome. It's so hot there. We got Arizona, Abilene, Texas. Hey, St. Vincent. Good to see you again. Malk, it's good to have you in the chat room. We've got St. Louis. It's St. Louis, but, you know, that's not how the old-timey shows talk about St. Louis. It says, meet me in St. Louis. So that's what it is. We're just decided that's what it is. We got Louisiana, Tyler, Texas, Kurdistan, Wisconsin, Harrisburg, PA. Checking in. Hello, Angola. We got, do I think the new version of Network Plus is harder than the old one? I think it's from a difficulty perspective. I think it's from a difficulty level. I think both exams are about the same from a difficulty level. I think they're pretty much the same, just newer information. Some information's been removed, some information's been added, but the overall difficulty level is about the same. Now, right now, it's actually more challenging to complete the 007, the older version, because that version retires next month on the 30th. So if you were starting right now, you wouldn't have enough time to finish. So 008 is pretty much where everybody, I guess, should be right now, unless you are finishing up the 007. You've been studying for months, you're getting that information into your brain, and now you're ready to take the cert. Absolutely go take the 007. Why wouldn't you? Makes perfect sense. But if you are not, if you are just starting your studies, then I would recommend definitely taking the latest one, 008. It just makes sense. There's San Diego, Puerto Rico. Thanks for being here. I haven't been down to Puerto Rico in a while. I need to get down there. I used to cover Puerto Rico for business. They just assumed that you were in Florida, that you would cover the Caribbean, including Puerto Rico, which is out there. And I would always tell them, well, why am I not covering New York? They said, why would you cover New York? You're in Florida. I said, it's faster to fly to New York than it is to Puerto Rico. They had to get a map out and go, oh, that's That is a thing. It does take a bit of a flight to get to Puerto Rico from Florida. So you kind of had to, they don't know. They don't live in the South. They don't live in the Caribbean. They don't know. They don't live in the Atlantic. But it's interesting, though, when you put them next to each other. Yep, that's the case. So there's a lot of travel. It's not a lot of travel. You get on a plane. It's just another hour on the plane, right? That's all it is. That's all it ever is. It's just another hour on the plane. We're just another hour going through there. What else have we got going on here? We got quite a bit. I got All Network Plus here. Really pretty much all the time right now is A+. It's all A+ videos all the time for me. And then once that's over, we have some some additional A+ content to create. Then I'm kind of circling back with Network Plus. I want to create some new Network Plus content. And then who knows? Who knows where we go from there? We don't know. We'll figure it out. Let's see what we're doing here. I've got recordings going. Streaming looks very good. The cache rates are very good. Data rates are good. So internet is solid right now. Where's the actual wood on this desk? Internet's looking pretty good. Presentation looks good. I think we're in good shape. We just now wait till the top of the hour. Hope everybody else doing well. Hello, downtown Houston and Anderson, South Carolina, and Georgia is here. Georgia in the USA. Thank you for that clarification, because you don't know. It could be anywhere. It could be the other Georgias. How many other Georgias are there? I know there's at least one other, right? Do I think the official CompTIA course books are worth it if I've already got your course notes? Well, course notes don't replace a book. Books don't replace the notes. Those are two different things. So you don't really, it's hard to compare and contrast because those provide different types of information from different sources. I think everybody should get at least one book, 2 books, if even better. And I like the CompTIA books because I know the people that wrote them. I've been working with the people that were authored the CompTIA books for years and years and years and years and years. So they make good stuff. So that's the difference in my mind. Hello, UK and Missouri. Thanks for being here. How many of these port numbers are really the important ones to memorize? Anything that's in the CompTIA exam objectives are the ones that are most important to memorize. There you go. How come you didn't offer a practice test like you did for A+? Well, I just haven't written it yet. It's not that I haven't. It's just it's not finished. It's slightly started. It's more of a timing thing. The challenge with writing practice test books is you have to write them. That is the biggest challenge when writing a book, is that it actually has to be written. And it's just timing. I create these as I go. And right now we just haven't had the right timing to be able to do that. So the CompTIA practice exams are very good. But I will eventually, my plan in the future is to produce and write an N10-008 practice exam book. It's timing. It's timing. It's timing. That's what it is. We're almost there. This is not the show. For those of you, thank you for your cards and letters, wondering why my show is just this boring view of the back of my head, because we haven't started yet. 1 minute, less than a minute, and we will get started. To be fair, I don't know if the rest of the actual show is going to be any good. I know that this isn't it, though. So there you go. It's up to you whether the rest of this is any good. We're going to find out, right? I think we should probably start this presentation. Have to get things going. So we can figure this out. We can get through all of these. That looks good. This looks good. We could probably get Keynote running here. We've got green light. Yes, green light. So that's all good. I think it's about time we do a study group, everybody. It's almost it's practically top of the hour. It is top of the hour. What am I waiting for? Well, waiting for this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 2022 Professor Messer N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. It's our monthly study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and then you get to answer them in real time if you're here watching us live. If you're on the replay, still stick around. There's plenty to do on the replay as well. We always have a good time. And in the second hour, I open up the chat room. We'll take questions about anything you would like to talk about. I don't know that I'll answer anything that you might want to talk about, but I'll try. We'll go through all of these and figure out the details of this. If you are here live and you would like to participate, I would recommend that you open up a new browser window and go to this link, professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that you can visit to answer questions. In fact, there's a question there right now that you can answer. If you're watching this on the replay, obviously that is not going to be available. So make sure you have a look at some just the live stream and just follow along as we go. Obviously, the interactive pieces won't be working if we're not actually interactive right now. And of course, we've got other options for you. If you'd like to use an app instead, go to professormesser.com/QA in your browser, or go to your favorite app store and download the Socrative student app. That Socrative student app is the one you want. You don't want the teacher app, so make sure you do that. Now, if you use the app, it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. So if you do all of that, there will be a question waiting for you, and that question asks, which of the following would be required to use a clientless VPN? This is our rewind question from last month to see if you can get it and answer these questions. Is it a dynamic routing protocol, MFA, WPA2, 802.1x, or HTML5 compliant browser? Which of the following would be required to use a clientless VPN? Is it a dynamic routing protocol, MFA, WPA2, 802.1x, or an HTML5 compliant browser? Now, if you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You want to follow this link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. We'll come back to these questions in just a moment as you are thinking through this one. One of the things that I try to do in these study groups is to give you content that is very specific to that N10-008 exam. But when we're not here doing these live, there's plenty of other places you can go to get some of this content. Of course, our YouTube channel is a great place for that at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have Twitter and Instagram, where we put our weekly Network Plus pop quiz question. That question simply posted to Twitter, and it comes with a pretty picture if you're looking at it on Instagram, of course. Now, as we sit here in May of 2022, then we have to look at what Network Plus exams are currently available, because right now there are two different exams you could take. You only need to take one of these and pass it to be Network Plus certified. The first is the N10-007. This is a version of the exam that was released in March of 2018, and this exam is going to be retired on June the 30th of 2022. Now, that's an important number because if you're studying right now N10-007 study materials, make sure you pass this exam by June the 30th, 2022. It's a 90-minute exam. You need to get a 720 on a scale from 100 to 900, and you could get a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than that, but that's the max they could ever possibly give you. And then the exam itself is a combination of multiple choice-based questions and what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. And we'll explain more about performance-based questions in just a moment. There's also a newer exam. It's not any better or worse. It's simply newer, and it doesn't matter which exam you take to be able to earn your certification. But you need to decide now if you've been studying the 007, continue to study. But if you're just starting your studies, you may want to study the N10-008 exam objectives. That was released on September the 15th of 2021, last year, and we expect it will probably retire around March of 2025. That gives you plenty of time to study now, doesn't it? This is one that is probably the one most people will start studying if they begin today. So you've got a choice, and make sure you choose properly. Make sure all your study materials match the version of the exam that you plan on taking. Don't forget that on our website, all of the videos that we have are absolutely free. You can watch every video that's on our YouTube channel. You don't have to register. You don't have to get behind a paywall. You don't have to do anything special. They're just all available for you to watch whenever you'd like. There are also course notes. We've got our Exam Hacks ebook. We've got offline versions of all of these videos in our Success Bundle. The Success Bundle itself will ship with a USB drive if you get the physical version. And of course, we've got these course notes that can come along with it. We also have digital versions of this. You can just download everything that's on this USB drive. That's available on my website, professormesser.com/netsuccess. Also let you know that the video podcast or the video version of this live stream is available on YouTube immediately afterwards. There's a podcast version of this in an audio-only form that you can connect or link to your favorite podcast listening program. Go to professormesser.com/podcast, and you will be able to see everything that's there on the podcast replays, not just for Network Plus, but also for A Plus and Security Plus. If you do go out to YouTube, at least 24 hours after the event, you'll see that everything in our live stream has a timestamp, and you'll be able to jump to anything you would like on that list to be able to see exactly where the different topics are and how you can find them very, very quickly. And you can go back years thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this right now, probably at 2x speed, so she can figure out where those timestamps happen to be. I think it is a great resource, and you should take advantage of that on the YouTube video description. We've also got a Discord channel, a Discord server. You're welcome to join us as well. We've got a lot to talk about there because it's usually where we hang out. We're not doing one of these live streams. Feel free to join us. It is our 24-hour chat at professormesser.com/Discord. I'll also let you know that eventually you're going to need to purchase a voucher so that you can take this exam. But if you go directly to Pearson VUE, you pay full price. If you go to the Professor Messer website, you get a discount that is already built in to the voucher. These are for everyone who is in the U.S. and Canada only, unfortunately, at the moment. Those discounted vouchers are simply discounted on my site. There's no special coupon codes or special things you would need to do. They're just already discounted, which is how I like to do things. If you purchase a voucher on my site, you also get more. You also get a bonus that you don't get on the Pearson VUE site, and that is my Exam Hacks ebook that can help you before, during, and even after your exams, help you understand exactly how to get a few more points out of that particular exam. That just comes with this for free if you purchase a voucher on the Professor Messer website. Just visit professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question we talked about before, which is, which of the following would be required to use a clientless VPN? Is it Dynamic Routing Protocol, MFA, WPA2, 802.1x, or HTML5 compliant browser? Let's see how you answered. If we look at our results, well, this is almost exactly the results we had last month. So we either remembered sort of what the answer was, or maybe we have just a bunch of new folks that are here. We can see that 46% of you say it's an HTML5 compliant browser, 25% say it's a dynamic routing protocol, 15% said 802.1x, 11% said MFA, and 4% said WPA2. So quite a big gap also between all of the questions coming in. So the real question, a clientless VPN. If you've ever used a VPN, you've probably started an application that's running on your system, and that application is then connected to the VPN concentrator. So you had to run some type of executable that was loaded or installed on your computer. But there's the latest edition or latest evolution of VPN clients is one that you don't have to install on your system. It doesn't have to be an executable that is running on your computer. Instead, it's part of your browser. It's an HTML5 version. HTML5 is the hypertext markup language. It's the language that our web pages are built in. And HTML5 comes with a lot of new capabilities, including comprehensive API support. The API support allows people to read and write to the browser with very specific application programming interface links that allows them to take advantage of some of the web cryptography that's built into the browser so that you can create a VPN client by simply visiting a web page. It's a beautiful thing, and it works like a champ. You don't have to install anything. There's nothing to maintain. You simply go to a particular web page, and you can do that. The only requirement is that you are running an HTML5 compliant browser. These days, basically everything is HTML5 compliant. So as long as you're up to date with your browser, you can take advantage of an HTML5 compliant browser to connect to a clientless VPN. So if you answered E, the 46% of you got that one absolutely right. That is the correct answer. That's what you would do. These other options that are here we went through last month, but dynamic routing protocols have nothing to do with using a clientless VPN. The only thing they do require or provide you as a way to automatically update routing connections or routing descriptions. Some people do static routes, so you don't need a dynamic routing protocol to use a clientless VPN. Those two things are not related to each other. You've got 802.1x, which is a way to provide network access control. And although it's nice to have that when you're logging in with the VPN, it's not required. Multi-factor authentication, another nice to have when you're authenticating, but not required to use a clientless VPN. And WPA2 is a wireless encryption protocol, which may or may not have anything to do with running a clientless VPN, certainly not required to run a clientless VPN. So the answer here is about what we got last month, which is about 48% of you chose HTML5 compliant browser. That is the right answer. You got it absolutely correct. Well, let's, now that we have gotten into our rewind question, we're able to connect and view the questions and answer them. Let's do a new question. And of course, the first new question of every study group is a performance-based question. And I have one for you. The one we just did, the question we just went through, was a multiple choice-based question where there is a question and multiple choices to choose from. But the first handful of questions you get on your exam will not be multiple choice questions. You should be ready for this. Do not think that when you go into your exam, it's all going to be choose A, B, C, or D. When you get to your exam, the first, 5 or so links will be, those questions will be questions that are not multiple choice. So they might be putting you at a command prompt and asking you to perform a function. It might be asking you to perform a drag and drop on a graphic. Maybe it's putting things in a particular order. Maybe it's a matching question. You never know exactly what it might be. But the first new question of every study group is a performance-based question. So let's do our performance-based question of the month, which asks, match the Ethernet standard to the description. Some standards will not be used. And annoyingly, I have just a bunch of builds on this page for some reason, and I know not why as I'm looking through it. Let me just build them all out. There we go. So I have 4 different descriptions, and I have 7 different standards. So obviously, some of the standards will be left over at the end. For those of you listening on the podcast side, let me step through these. Number 1, the description is supports 1 gigabit over Category 5 cable. That's 1 gigabit per second over Category 5 cable. The second is maximum range of 10 kilometers. The third is a maximum throughput of 10 megabits per second. And the fourth is uses Category 8 cable to a maximum of 30 meters. And I have for you 7 different standards. And the 7 standards are 40G base T, 1000 base T, 10G base T, 100 base TX, 10 base T, and 10G base LR. Which, of course, all of these standards are listed in the N10-008 exam objectives. So it's useful if we know what these happen to be. So as you go through this and have a look, you'll have to figure out what options are available here, but see if you can match together those four different descriptions to 4 of those standards. And of course, 3 of those standards will just be left over at the end. Do I have 6 there? Should there be 7? Oh, there's a 7th one, 100 base FX. Almost forgot. How am I supposed to do this if there's only 6 of them? It needs to be 7. So there it is. You've got all of those options supporting 1 gigabit over Category 5 cable, a maximum range of 10 kilometers, a maximum throughput of 10 megabits per second, and it uses Category 8 cable to a maximum of 30 meters. And those, of course, are 40G base T, 1000 base T, 10G base T, 100 base TX, 10 base T, 10G base LR, and 100 base FX. Wow. There's a lot of standards in the Network Plus exam. And this, of course, is for the N10-008. It's a different set of standards on the 007. So if some of you are studying for the 007, obviously I mentioned at the beginning that this is a 008 study group, but you have 3+ years of 007 study groups archived on the Professor Messer website, and that's where I would recommend you spend your time if you are trying to get that right there on that exam, trying to lock it down before that 007 goes away. That would be good. And have to figure all of this out. So lock in your answer by visiting professormesser.com/QA. If you think you know the answer, you just lock it in. It's a fill in the blank on my website where you have, you would type in 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D if you think they're already in order. That's how quickly you can do this. So lock it in and remember your answer, because once you lock it in, you can't see what your answer was. So remember that I did not design the answer part of this. So that is one that's another thing to keep in mind as you lock in that answer. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's go through each one of these descriptions and see which standard fits best for what we're doing. So I want to be able to lock this down, and let's see how we do. The first question as we go through this, or the first description as we go through this, was supporting 1 gigabit, obviously 1 gigabit per second over Category 5 cable. Which one of these standards supports 1 gigabit per second over Category 5 cable? The answer, 1000 base T. I gave you an easy one to kind of get things started. That is the base configuration. In fact, that is the minimum category of cable supported by 1000 base T, and it indeed supports at least up to 1 gigabit per second. So you have some options there. Second on your list, the maximum range of 10 kilometers. The maximum range of 10 kilometers can be found on 10G base LR. The LR for long range, technically those terms don't actually mean anything. The 10G base LR doesn't officially stand for anything. But if you break out the words, the letters that are in there, 10G means it runs 10 gigabit speed. Base means it's a baseband standard, which means there is a single frequency of communication used across the medium. And then LR, I think it's not part of the standard, but long range is the good way to do this. The LR piece is not officially, LR is not officially a long range, but it certainly is one that is an easy way to remember what this is. And I think if we get into the minds of the people who create the standard name, LR that's what it is. It's long range. Because there's all other standards with similar types of abbreviations that we can figure out. Next on our list is a maximum throughput of 10 megabits per second. Is this a gimme? Maybe it's a gimme. But 10 megabits per second is 10 base T. You don't see much 10 base T out there any longer, but it's one that is very common on legacy systems. So that is exactly where we would go with this. 10 base T is 10 megabits per second, baseband communication. And the T, I guess, technically means twisted pair. But if you were ever in a case where you're looking at these standards, sometimes the abbreviations don't actually mean these things. But in this case, that is a standard that does support 10 megabits per second over twisted pair cabling. And lastly on our list, uses Category 8 cable to a maximum of 30 meters. Well, if we're dealing with Category 8, then we must be using one of the relatively new standards out there. And indeed, 40 gigabits per second is supported with 40G base T. That is a good one to have there. 40G base T is your option. Category 8 cable is supported to a maximum 30 meters if you are running a 40G base T standard. This is an important consideration, of course, is that categories of cable don't have a speed. Categories of cable it's just cable. It's just a piece of copper. It doesn't go fast. It doesn't go slow. The real piece of information that's important is what is the standard running that you're going to use, and then what is the support for that standard. A lot of these 802.3 standards are available for you to download and view, so you can always go out to the IEEE website, download the standards, and see what's really written in there. You may find it more difficult once you start reading the standard, though. There's a lot in there. The ones we did not use were answer C, which is 10G base T. That's 10 gigabit over twisted pair. We have 100 base TX, which is 100 megabit Ethernet over twisted pair. This is a really good example of where the letters used in these standards don't exactly mean anything, because TX, why wasn't it 100 base T? Well, because with 100 megabits, there were a lot of different 100 megabit standards. There was a T1, there was a T4, there's a TX, there's a few there. So they decided to specify a 2-pair of twisted pair cabling. They would call it TX on the 100 megabit. That's why you sometimes will see folks mention 1000 base T as 1000 base TX. Technically not correct, but we were so used to saying TX that's where that happens. That's where that comes from. So last on our list that we did not use was the 100 base FX, which is a 100 megabit Ethernet over fiber FX is what the sort of what that means. What's the X mean? I don't know. It's just there. Fiber X. So that's a good example, though, of how these terms are not abbreviations. It's not an acronym. It's simply the name of the standard that somehow has some reference back to reality. And sometimes it doesn't have a reference back to reality. And that's why you, as the folks who have to memorize this, you're in the position of having to go through all of these standards and really understand what these happen to be. And that's pretty close. We know if we see 100 base TX, you should instantly know what that is. If you see 1000 base T, you should know what that is. So that is exactly what you would be using on that. It doesn't have, I know folks in the chat room are going, well, maybe it means this, or maybe it means this. Maybe it does, but it's not part of the name of the standard. It doesn't mean anything as far as the standard name is concerned. If you're applying a term to that, it's you applying it. And actually, it's a great way to remember it if you're applying that name to it. So apply whatever you would like to be able to make that work. I think it would be a good choice for what you're doing. Yeah, you did very well with that one. The answers that we saw come through for the standards are very specific. So I'm glad you were able to go through the standards. There are other standards in the N10-008 exam objectives. I didn't go through all of them. So make sure you go through the objectives and you know what each one of those standards is referencing. That's going to be an important part of what you do. That is our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you were able to get some of those correct. You've got at least options there. And that's why, as we work through this, it'd be a good one. In the chat room, I would like to bring this up. It's a good question. WD's bringing something up from a performance-based question we had in a previous study group where I said I didn't know what the F stood for in an F connector, and at the time I did not. And we had a lot of ideas about it. Some people say it means frequency. WD says it stands for fixed connector. Actually, I have the answer to this. And I will, in the after show, I'll bring up what I found that definitively identifies why we called this the F connector. See, now you have to stick around for the after show. It's very interesting as I was going through it. Let's do another question, though. Let's jump into the next question that is not a performance-based question. We're back to multiple choice. Okay. The multiple choice is, a technician is concerned that the fiber run between two buildings is too long to support a gigabit Ethernet connection. Which of the following should be used to verify the connection? Would it be spectrum analyzer, cable tester, light meter, port mirror, or multimeter? A technician is concerned that the fiber run between two buildings is too long to support a gigabit Ethernet connection. Which of the following should be used to verify the connection? Would it be spectrum analyzer, cable tester, light meter, port mirror, or multimeter? Now, if you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. That's the answer, the thing that's on your screen right now. There it is. professormesser.com/QA is where you want to go to answer this question. Again, no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. That's sort of the standing rule of our study groups, is so you can go through and really think about what the answer is, but then lock it down, lock it in, lock it on, I don't know, on the professormesser.com/QA link. It's the best place to go. That brings up that Socrative front end so that you can put the answer in, and then we'll see what you thought the answer was compared to everyone else at professormesser.com/QA. This is a pretty real-world question. I had been in this situation where I had fiber runs between two buildings, but we weren't quite sure if it was going to work properly. And I'll tell you, the answer is in this list. I'll tell you exactly what we used to be able to do this. Let's see what you think the answer is. Is it a spectrum analyzer, a cable tester, a light meter, a port mirror, or a multimeter? We look at the results. 57% or so say light meter, but we've got 22% that said cable tester and 18% that said spectrum analyzer. We got 2% that said multimeter and only 1% said port mirror. So can we throw those out? I guess we can. We don't know the answer yet, so I'm not sure that we really can throw those out yet. But let's see what the actual answer might be. You've got this fiber run between buildings. You don't know if it's going to be able to work or not. The real key with a fiber run, the real determining factor, the one perhaps most important specification, perhaps above others, would be how much light is able to get from one end of the fiber to the other. So on the receiving side, I want to know how much light I'm seeing, because that's going to determine if this link is going to work at all. And the way that I would measure how much light I am getting on the receiving side is with a meter that measures light. A light meter will show you exactly how much light is coming through. It's usually measured by decibels so that you can get a quantitative analysis and be able to compare different settings or different results from different connections. You could also, the chat room is saying, what about a time domain reflectometer? A TDR, great for copper networks. I think you're thinking of an OTDR, which would be an optical time domain reflectometer, and that would work as well, but that wasn't one of your options. The question was, which of the following should be used to verify this connection? And intentionally, an OTDR was not in there. And that's why. So, because then you'd have two to choose from, and that's not the question I wanted to ask you. So that's exactly what you should use. So we send some light from one side to the other. It's measured. We get to measure how much power is coming through and being able to do that. And then we've got, at least the ability to answer a question. Are we able to get enough light through this connection? Can we do it? Yes, we can. So that is what you would use, is a light meter, to be able to understand that. Absolutely the correct answer. 60% of you chose C, the light meter. That's what you would choose for this. Now, you've got other options here. 20% of you said a cable tester would work great, except we don't really have copper cables here. We have a fiber run, an important consideration in this question. So this would not be the one we would use. We would not use a cable tester. So that's not it. How about spectrum analyzer? Spectrum analyzers are great tools. They're great tools to use at home. If you're in amateur radio, you use spectrum analyzers a lot. And if you are using wireless networks like 802.11, AB, GN, AX, AC, any of those, a spectrum analyzer can tell you if there's other things using similar frequencies around you. In this case, we're dealing with fiber. There's no RF. There's no radio frequency. There's no spectrum to analyze in the wireless space. Technically, there is a spectrum that is communicating through fiber, but we don't tend to think of that as being accessible through a spectrum analyzer. So that would not be what we would use. Much better, much easier. Just have a light meter and be able to test it, have it go through. So perfect to be able to have that. And then you've got the two that nobody really answered. 2% of you said multimeter. Multimeters are great for evaluating how much voltage or continuity might be on a copper connection, but they're not going to help you very much with fiber. There are fiber-based meters like that, but obviously that's not what we were talking about. We're talking about a multimeter. And then a port mirror is usually built into your switch. It's a function of your switch that can redirect traffic from one port on your switch or interface on your switch to another interface that's on your switch. That would be what a port mirror does. Has nothing to do with understanding whether a fiber run is going to work properly or not. So in this case, fiber run points us to light meter, and indeed, answer C, 61% of you got that one absolutely right. That was the right answer. If you answered light meter, that was the correct tool for this particular job. Let's do another one. Got other questions here. So a lot of you, whenever you come to my study groups, you say, let's do some subnetting questions. You may be sad that you said that, because I have for you, that's kind of an easy subnetting question. We're going to ease into this. So the question asks, a user's IP address is 192.168.10.23 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. Not sure what happened with the grammar there, but we're just going to pretend everything looks fine. What would be the last available host address on this subnet? That is the real question. A user's IP address is 192.168.10.23 with a subnet mask of 255.255.0. What would be the last available host address on the subnet? I guess technically it works. Technically the grammar works there. Your available answers are, click, 192.168.10.255, 192.168.10.1, 192.168.10.11, 192.168.10.254, and 192.168.10.0. What is it? What does it happen to be? If you think you know the answer, please visit this link, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Just lock it in and see if you happen to know what this answer is. There is a little bit of subnetting in the CompTIA exam objectives, and I think that is probably a good representation of how much you will get on your exam for subnetting. There's this tiny little section that's part of a larger subsection that's in a domain that is one of many domains. So you might get a subnetting question on your exam. You might get 2. I've had someone once tell me they got 3. Some people have told me they got 0. So you've got at least some options there to work through. You got a few things that you can figure out. See if you happen to know what they are by figuring out. This one is one, and I tried to do a subnetting question you can do in your head. So this is definitely one you can do in your head. So this would be a good one. That is really the important thing to go through. If you're trying to figure out answers, a lot of these subnetting questions you will get on your exam might be ones that don't really require any calculations other than what you can easily do very, very quickly. So I think this was designed to be that way. It's probably pretty accurate as to the type of question you might see on your exam. So let's see how we did with this one. Let's see how you locked in your answers with this one. The question asked, a user's IP address is 192.168.10.23 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. What would be the last available host address on this subnet? Is it 192.168.10.255, 192.168.10.1, 192.168.10.11. This is why I don't do more of these. 192.168.10.254 or 192.168.10.0. which would be the last available host address on this subnet. 79% of you say it's 192.168.10.254, but 12% of you say it's 192.168.10.255. And then we got single digits from there. Effectively a three-way tie for third between .1, .11, and .0. So which one is it? Let's look at our subnet calculations. This one's a little bit easy to do. And in fact, I took it directly from my videos. So if you just watch the videos on this, you sort of got an easy answer, because I just simply took the IP address and subnet mask that's from my subnetting video, my broadly class-based subnetting video, because although technically we don't use classes for subnet masks any longer, you can very easily see that this particular subnet mask does end on one of those octet boundaries. And that's why when we look at creating the subnet, we figure out where that boundary is. So for 255.255.255.0, well, you can very easily see there's a boundary there where we have zeros on one side and 255s on the other. So we draw a line right there just so you can see the difference between the network side and the host side. Should be very easy to see once you really look at the subnet mask and draw that line right in the middle. Not right in the middle, but you know what I'm saying. Draw the line right where the two halves are between the 255s and the zeros. So if we bring down that IP address, the network is 192.168.10. The host is .23. Well, now we just need to do our normal calculations for things like the network address. If you want to determine what the network address is, we set all host bits to 0, and that's your network address. So if I asked you what is the network address for this user, you would have said 192.168.10.0. Let's figure out the first host address, which is you add 1 to the number of the network address, which means the first available host address or on this network is 192.168.10.1. And the last, well, we'll get to that second. And then the broadcast address is you set all the host bits to 1, which means that the broadcast address would be 192.168.10.255. So the last available host address on this network is one that is one less than the broadcast address. So the last host address that you could possibly use on this particular network is 192.168.10.254. That is the last host you could possibly assign on this particular network. So that is what we're talking about as we go through this. Let's fix this problem. And so you can see the correct answer, the 79% of you chose exactly the correct answer, which is 192.168.10.254. Now, 13% of you said 192.168.10.255, which would be correct if I asked you what the broadcast address for this network happens to be. Broadcast address cannot be used by hosts. You can't assign a broadcast address to an end station. So this question obviously asked what would be the last available host address on the subnet. The host address is one less than the broadcast address, which means it's 192.168.10.254. That's what we were looking for. 79% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. I think you did pretty good with your subnetting question. Everybody always tells me they have such a problem with this. You guys did great. You have no problem with this part of subnetting. So you're already well along with the subnetting process if you were able to follow along with this. And if you weren't, go back to my video on classful subnetting. I take you through this very example on my N10-008. It's in section 1.4 of my video series. There is a lot in this video series, by the way. If you look through the exam objectives, it's extensive. I have 93 videos in my Network Plus course. That's a lot of videos, and I can't expect that everybody. What am I talking about? All of you should watch every video, but the realistic side of me says, well, not everybody has time or the ability to watch every single one of these, so that's probably not the best option either. But there still needs to be some way to collapse all of that valuable information into one place. And I've done this with my Network Plus course notes. I've taken everything from my videos and I've created for you kind of a quick reference guide, if you will, of everything that's in these videos. You can see there's over 74 pages in this set of course notes, and look at all these things that are in here. It just goes on and on. If anything, Network Plus is a very graphical exam that you would need to take. There's a lot of stuff in these course notes. I have packed it full of information. It's a great set of notes to use if you're studying for your exam. There's both the digital version that you just saw, and there is a physical version available as well. The physical version also printed in full color and shipped directly to you. If you do purchase the physical edition, I give you the digital edition for no additional cost. So while you're waiting on this to get delivered to you, because it does take time, got to print them, put them in a box, send them to you. So while you're waiting on that, you can, of course, look through the digital version, put it on all of the devices you use so you can have it with it wherever you happen to go. We spend a lot of time on these notes, and for a good reason. There's so much in here. I've had people tell me, I just watch the videos and I go through your notes, and that's what I need to know for the exam. I don't necessarily recommend that that's the process you use, but it is certainly one that has worked for others. My course notes can be found on my website. Follow the pull-down links for the version of the Network Plus course notes you'd like to find, or simply visit professormesser.com/NPCN for Network Plus course notes. That's what that is. And folks in the chat room, some folks in the chat room already have the course notes. They said the notes are good, keeps track of the videos. Chris says the course notes are amazing. Got the printed version, highly recommended. Thank you, Chris, and thanks for getting the printed version too. I just want to make everything available as much as I can, and this is a good way to do it. So we appreciate your support. Thank you for your purchases. Thank you for consideration of the course notes, and thanks for helping to support what we do here at ProfessorMesser.com. Let's do another question. This next question asks, a routing table includes an entry for 0.0.0.0.0/0. Which of the following would describe this routing table entry? Is it administrative distance, default route, next hop, subnet mask, gateway interface? A routing table includes an entry for 0.0.0.0/0. Which of the following would describe this routing table entry? Is it administrative distance, default route, next hop, subnet mask, or gateway interface? If you think you know the answer, follow this link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. We'll have to see if you know what it is. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. See if you know what this is. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to give it away. I've got lots of stories about 0.0.0.0/0, so I can't wait to tell you about them. I don't know if I have a lot of stories. I have stories. There's always something in my travels, in my implementations, as I've been going through and working through these different scenarios, different implementations. As many of you know, I've done a lot of work in data centers. I've implemented a lot of security technologies. I have planned, designed, and put things into some of the largest data centers in the world. And so certainly these things we talk about in Network Plus are things that have just come up all the time. You're going to run into these things constantly. So I want to be sure that you are familiar with these. And of course, it's also on the exam objectives. You have to know it for your exam. So absolutely what you could do. Have a look at that. See if you happen to know what that answer is and lock it in. A number of you are putting in your answers. You're trying. Stop Googling. No Googling. I'm watching you. I can see you. You think I can't see you. I see what you're doing. I am not oblivious to the work that's being done behind the scenes as you type things into the Google machine. And it probably gives it away if you do the Google machine. So don't do that. You can't do Google on your exam. So a lot of, see, chat room, at least you were honest and saying, yeah, you got me. Yeah, I was Googling. Although people in the chat room saying, nope, didn't use the Google. That's because you're over on Bing. You can't fool me. Don't think, let's see. I do not know your browsing history. I don't want to know your browsing history. Please don't send me your browsing history. That's the one thing that should absolutely be number one rule. Don't want to see it. Let's see how you did with this question. It asked, a routing table includes an entry for 0.0.0.0/0. Which of the following would describe this routing table entry? Is it an administrative distance, a default route, a next hop, a subnet mask, or a gateway interface? What do you think it is? Let's see how you did. 62% of you say that's a default route. We have tie for second effectively, 16% for gateway interface, 14% for administrative distance. So we've got a good choice of things, although 62% is obviously a majority of you that have answered default route. We have 5% that said next hop and 4% that said subnet mask, so effectively a tie for third. The one that jumps right out is default route. Should we go with that? Is that the one we want to really lock down and say that's what we're going with? 0.0.0.0/0? Yes, that is the default route. Some organizations, some router manufacturers will call this a gateway of last resort. And I have people send me messages all the time saying, that's not a default route. That's a gateway of last resort. I know, that's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. So if you see something that says gateway of last resort, that's a default route. That's what that is. And we can pick the nits over that later on if you would like to. That's one of the very common, if you're doing static routing and working through this, a static route is one that you would manually configure in a router. And many organizations do this. I know we talk in the Network Plus of dynamic routing, and you could use EIGRP, and you could use OSPF, and you could use BGP so that you don't have to configure any routing on any of your routers. You simply turn on EIGRP or you simply turn on OSPF, and it automatically and dynamically updates itself with all of the routes that it needs to know. Well, in some environments, that means doing things automatically isn't always necessarily something they would like to do. Some router administrators would prefer the router not make its own decisions on what routes it should use, and instead they prefer manually configuring a route for that router so that it will always route a particular way. There's nothing that's better or worse for doing this. It's simply a method of administration for these devices. And in fact, in most of these situations, static route works great and it works perfectly, and you don't have the overhead of dynamic routing that you have to deal with. What this really is, you can think of this as you have a router at a remote site. Maybe you're at headquarters and you want to put a router at a remote site. Let's say you have a store that's out there in the world connected to the wide area network, and there's nothing else out there between you and this store. It's just you and the store. That's it. We'll take a very simple network. The routing table for the store should effectively be, if you need anything, come back to corporate. That's it. That's your only route you would ever need ever from that store. It's obviously a very simple network, relatively speaking, but a lot of networks are that simple. There's just a bunch of remote sites that are pointing back to a central facility, and in a way to simplify the administration of all these remote sites, they put in a static route that says, if you ever need anything, just come back to corporate. And we'll put in a static route in there that is a default route of 0.0.0/0. So that is probably as simple as it gets. You put in that route and you're done. Whenever you work through this, there are, of course, other routes you could add to the routing table. So if there's other routes internally within the remote site that you would like to have in that routing table, you could add those as well. But if a route to an IP address that you've put in doesn't exist in the routing table, what does the router do? It follows the gateway of last resort. It follows your default route. And the term we use, or the IP address we use to define what a default route is the one on the screen, 0.0.0.0/0. So you will see that default route pop up all the time. So that is very common to see on routers and being able to work through it. In the chat room, some folks are talking about your video that you're receiving. Make sure you check the little cog wheel at the bottom of your view. I'm sending you 1080p. So if you're seeing anything different, you may want to adjust your YouTube settings so that you can get it just a little bit sharper instead of seeing me fuzzy on the screen. This is how I look in other resolutions. That was my interpretive dance of other resolutions. I hope you enjoyed that. Let's do another question before this devolves into something even worse. This next question on our list as we go through. Here we go. Can I get to another question? I cannot. Here we go. This next question asks, well, there we go. We're not going to do that question because I just gave you the answer. Did you see it? You didn't. Well, we're going to do it anyway. A network administrator needs to identify the top 10 ingress and egress devices by bytes on their internal network. Which of the following would be the best way to provide this information? Would it be syslog, ifconfig, netstat, performance monitor, or netflow? That's right. We're going to pretend nobody saw that. Well, if you're on the podcast side, you didn't. A network administrator needs to identify the top 10 ingress and egress devices by bytes on their internal network. Which of the following would be the best way to provide this information? Is it syslog, ifconfig, netstat, performance monitor, or netflow? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. That was kind of John Cena, wasn't it? Except it was two hands. So it wasn't quite. What's he do? Two hands? I thought he only did one hand because he's invisible. I'm not invisible. I'm just fuzzy. See the difference? It's obvious when you see that, to have that there. I think that's the real key, is this. Is John Cena bald? Maybe he is. Maybe he is. You don't know. Could be. I don't think he is. So we'll have to see. I'll send him a note after we're done here. We'll break this down and figure out the details of this. This is this question on the 007? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. You say he's not bald. You don't know. You don't know. I mean, you see hair, but is that his hair? Oh, see? And in fact, you don't see hair here. Do I really have a bald cap on? You don't know. It could happen. Let's see how we do with this question that I gave away earlier on. So I'm kind of throwing out the question, but we're going to use it anyway because there's some good stuff here you should know about for the N10-008. The question again asked, a network administrator needs to identify the top 10 ingress and egress devices by bytes on their internal network. Which of the following would be the best way to provide this information? Would it be syslog, ifconfig, netstat, performance monitor, or netflow? The answer that you provided was 44% of you said netflow. You have to take advantage of my mistakes, people. You've got to jump on these quickly. Whenever I make a mistake, you need to be there. 26% said netstat. 14% said performance monitor, effectively a tie with 12% for syslog. And coming in last, sadly, ifconfig at 2%. So this is an interesting question because this is what network administrators want to see. You know, the number one statistic everybody wants right out of the gate is, how's our bandwidth utilization? How are we doing on that link with utilization? And then there's a bunch of other stats we want to see beyond that. So that is it. That's what we want to really focus on, is where do we go to get these stats? I want to see the top people communicating on my network. Who's the top 10 users of transmitted traffic on my network? What are my top 10 users of received traffic? What are the top 10 users of both transmit and receive? You know, these are good stats to have so you can start understanding what the traffic flows might be like on your network. And one of the best ways to do this is by using a technology called NetFlow. There's a number of technologies that can do this, but of the ones you had available to you, the one that makes the most sense for this question is indeed NetFlow. NetFlow is a great way to gather statistics. It's been around forever, it seems. It's a standard that is used across many different devices. You can get NetFlow capabilities that are built into switches and other infrastructure devices. You can also get NetFlow as a separate probe. I used to work for companies that all we would do was create probes that provided NetFlow stats. That's entire organizations, entire businesses in this world have been built around NetFlow. Obviously, there's more than these companies do these days. Usually, there is a probe that you'd have on the network, usually built into a switch or something that's standalone. You can see a representation of a standalone network probe right here. And they are going to summarize all of the traffic that is going through that network and send a summary down to a NetFlow collector, which collects the data. And then it's also usually a management front end that allows you to create some nice reports from that information too. So this is something that people will commonly use to see what's going on the network. And you get statistics like this. You get top 10 conversations, top 10 endpoints, NetFlow sources, top 25 traffic analyzer events. There's a lot that NetFlow can do. And it can provide you with extensive details of what's going on your network. It's only one of many ways to gather this kind of information, but it certainly is a viable way to do it. You can see this information is extensive, and it can help you make decisions. If somebody comes to you and says, we need to add a new imaging application to this network. We expect this application might use 20% of the network bandwidth. Do we have the bandwidth available? I don't know. Do we? Well, one way to tell is to look at your NetFlow stats, and it can tell you how's the traffic, when's it being used, what is happening with it. That's a great way to do it, and it's the one you should have chosen. NetFlow, 47% of you chose eNetFlow. It would have been a great way to be able to see that. 26% of you said NetStat, and NetStat is great to get a instant analysis of what type of communication is going on between this particular system and the rest of the world. But it doesn't tell you anything about the top 10 ingress and egress across your entire network. It only gives you the perspective of one particular device. And could you imagine taking every device and having it run NetStat and then somehow compiling all of that together? It's not very practical. So NetStat wasn't designed to do this, and it doesn't work very well if you try. So although 26% of you did choose NetStat, that would not be the best way to provide this information. 12%, or let's go 14% said Performance Monitor. Similar scenario. Performance Monitor is a utility you can run in Windows on a single Windows device that tells you information about how that single Windows device is working. So Performance Monitor, not the best way to understand top 10 ingress and egress. It's hard to compile all that information together and see what's there. So I think that's one you should always think about, that it'll provide you great information from a single machine, but not for everything that's on the network. We got syslog, which is a standard for sending log files from disparate devices back to a centralized logging facility. Great for logging, great for seeing stats, but that in itself, syslog inherently does not identify top 10 ingress and egress devices. Maybe the logs that are transferred with syslog contain something that can help you gather those details, or maybe it doesn't, because syslog doesn't do this by default. You would have to have something send you logs with that data in it. Certainly not the best choice of all of the things you had to choose from. So it would not be syslog. 12% of you did choose that. And then finally, ifconfig, which just shows you the interface configuration on a Linux or Mac OS based device. Only 2% of you chose that one. Has nothing to do with the traffic flows across your network. It has to do with looking at the configuration of a single device. So in this case, really the only option, the best option that's here is indeed NetFlow. Answer E, 47% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Well, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. Before we get there, let me tell you that if you'd like to earn a continuing education unit credit for watching this video, I'd love to send you an email that has been digitally signed that says, yes, you can have 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. The way you would earn that email is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, and on that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put May 2022 Network Plus, and then put the super secret code word of the month next to it in the subject line, which really helps me a lot. And that super secret code word of the month is ifconfig. Ifconfig is the super secret code word of the month. The super secret code word of the month is ifconfig. I think we know what it is now. So you can also put anything into the body of the message that you would like. You can either repeat the ifconfig super secret code word. And of course, if you put anything in there, I'm reading it. So I'd love to read through the messages that you send. I'm not necessarily able to respond back to all of these because I get hundreds of these requests a month, but I love reading through, and I do read every single one of those you send to me. That is the way you would do it. Top or bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us. Put that is the May 2022 Network Plus Study Group, whatever month this is, and then put the super secret code word of the month, ifconfig, somewhere in there. Please make it very obvious. I've had people write me paragraphs of information, and somewhere in that paragraph, I think they were intending to hide the super secret code word of the month. I just can't bear to read through all of that, though, and find it and figure out what you're talking about. So make sure it's very obvious for someone like me that is just churning through these, and it helps so much more when it's just very obvious on the screen what the super secret code word is. Hopefully that will help you. Now, I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's do one more question, though. Let's fit one more into the mix. So here we go on the next question that asks, Which of the following would be the best way to prevent unauthorized users from connecting to the network through a switch interface? Would it be port security, spoofing, IPS, brute force, or WPA2? Which of the following would be the best way to prevent unauthorized users from connecting to the network through a switch interface? Would it be port security, spoofing, IPS, brute force, or WPA2? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. See if you happen to know. I think some of you know what this one is. We're going to see if you know what this one is. And I didn't give it away at the beginning by clicking through too quickly. As it turns out, that didn't hurt too much. I think I caught a number of people not looking at their screen at that very moment. So we're trying to figure out what reason, or maybe a number of you did see it and you intentionally chose the one you thought it really would have been had you not, which is probably what I would have done, because I want to really learn from this. The only time you really do get information out of these study groups, if you think about it, the only time it really helps you is when you're wrong, which is an odd way to think about this. You want to be as wrong as possible in these study groups. You want to investigate every single one of these answers. You want to really understand what all of these different topics are, because everything you've seen today is in the N10-008 exam objectives, both the correct answers and the incorrect answers. So it's really helpful if you can go through not only what you know to be right, but you also step through what you know to be wrong, so that you understand not only you understand strongly why you got it right, you understand strongly why you got it wrong, which I think is also good. I think that's pretty important. The sneak peek actually had the name on the slide, so that's why I say I kind of gave it away. I gave the answer away in that previous one. That's okay. I think we did pretty good. I think it went by so fast, you might not have even noticed that it was there. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which of the following would be the best way to prevent unauthorized users from connecting to the network through a switch interface? Would it be port security, spoofing, IPS, brute force, or WPA2? How did you do? Are we going to end on a high point? 80%, 80% say it is port security. 12% said IPS. 8% said WPA2. 1% said spoofing. And 0 people said brute force, which is how I think this should be brute force. How do you prevent people from connecting to the network? Through brute, you stand over them and you physically prevent them from doing it, of course. Brute force, that's not what brute force is. It sounds like that's what it would be, but it's not. The correct answer, 80% of you, how can we go wrong with this? Port security. It is a generic term that is applied to switches, and in some cases the switches use this term as the process that we're describing here, that can alert or disable a port if it recognizes that the normal user is not communicating through that port. So you go into a conference room or you go to someone's desk, you unplug their computer, you plug yours in, thinking you're going to be on the internal network, but oh no, they have port security configured, which is watching for MAC addresses on that interface. It knows that for the last 30 days, every time somebody connects to this particular interface, that it's the same MAC address every time. And then suddenly a new MAC address shows up. And so yes, that is going to fire some type of alarm if you've configured port security to look for those particular events. And then you could have it do something. You could have it on certain interfaces. You might have a rule that says if this MAC address changes, disable the interface. If this MAC address changes, maybe don't turn the interface off, because we just don't know what's going on. But we might want to simply send an alert or a message to the administrator saying something unusual is going on. Should check into this. Yeah, maybe the users brought a computer from home and they plugged in. Maybe it is something malicious. We don't know, because we just got an alert that says the MAC address is different than what we were expecting. In the best environments where you've got the security set to the highest, port security activates and says, we're disabling you. The instant this person tries to communicate, we shut down the interface and therefore shut down their path to the rest of the network. That is a feature built into the switch known as port security. Different switches call it different names, so check your manufacturer's documentation so you know exactly the term they use. But we're talking about Cisco. They say port security. That's what we're talking about. Now, IPS, 11% of you said an intrusion prevention system, which is a great way to prevent somebody from sending information onto the network that matches a known vulnerability. That they're using an exploit to take advantage of a vulnerability that's on another system. We're able to recognize that that is a malicious bit of information being sent through the network, and we can block it with an intrusion prevention system. And IPS does not necessarily, in fact, you would probably not use an IPS to be able to prevent unauthorized users from accessing the network. That's not what an IPS is for. The IPS is to stop normal authorized communication from sending something through the network that could be harmful, if you want to look at it that way. We also have in this list WPA2. 8% of you said WPA2. WPA2 is obviously the encryption that we can use on a wireless network to be able to keep things secure. WPA2 in itself doesn't prevent unauthorized users from connecting to the network from a switch, however. Wireless access point, perhaps WPA2 might apply, but we're not talking about a wireless access point. We're talking about a switch interface for this. So that is what we would use. And then for 1%, it's spoofing. Spoofing is when we modify something on our system to look as if it is something from another system, effectively copying or cloning what someone else is doing. Term we use for it in networking and other places is spoofing. We're spoofing someone else or some other person's device. And then brute force commonly associated with trying to find a password. We're checking every possible password scenario to see if we can match the password stored hash. 0% of you fell for that. Nobody thought it was brute force. 80% of you, I won't say everybody, but pretty much everybody said port security. Answer A is port security. Absolutely correct. Well done. That is the answer we were looking for. That's the one that will prevent unauthorized users from unplugging someone else, plugging into the network, and then gaining access to everything that's on the inside of your network. Where did all of these crazy terms come from? Well, they came from the exam objectives, of course. If you don't have these objectives, you're already at a disadvantage. How much is it going to cost for the objectives? How about free? You can download them for free, and you should download them for free. They are extremely valuable for your Network Plus studies. They are freely provided by CompTIA. Other certificate folks, the Microsofts of the world, the Ciscos, the VMwares, the Googles, the Apples, everybody who does certifications has some type of objective list, but nothing like this. You've never seen an objective list like this before. CompTIA effectively tells you, here's everything you need to know. And if you know everything that's in this document, you're going to pass your exam. I don't think I'm overstating that. I think that's a pretty accurate representation. There's so much in these objectives. They are incredibly valuable. I'm sure I have them up here, right? Here they are. Here's the objectives. Let me give you an idea what I'm talking about. Here's the first section 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4, and 1.5, 6, 7, and 8. And then domain 2, and then domain 3, and then domain 4. There's a lot of domain 5. Look at all of this. Pages and an acronym list built into the back. People ask me all the time, how do you keep track of all these acronyms? How about a list of them? There they are. All of this for free on the CompTIA website. Follow my link to find the link over on CompTIA. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and click the link there to get to the objectives. You can, of course, also go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll take you through and tell you everything you need to know. Great place to go. If you want to know when the next one of these events is going to be, simply go to the calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you will, of course, be able to find, in fact, if you look now, you'll see the next one is on June 15th. This date can sometimes change because that's the world I live in, where things change all the time. So don't worry if the times change, I update the calendar. So you'll know immediately when that's going to be. And if you're watching this video after June 15th, your best way to know when the next live one of these is going to be is to visit that link, professormesser.com/calendar. Can you believe we've gone through an hour already? But we're not done yet. We have an after show where I'm going to take questions from you in the after show directly from the chat room. So stick around for that. Don't forget about our success bundle at professormesser.com/netsuccess or bonus exam hacks with the voucher. Get the exam hacks book for free. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. Get a discounted voucher. Get the exam hacks book for free if you are in the U.S. or Canada. And of course, don't forget about our free Network Plus videos on YouTube. And of course, our daily or weekly Network Plus pop quiz questions on professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/Instagram. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour. Stick around for the after show. We've got a lot more questions coming up, and we find out what an F connector is about. We'll find out on the after show. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Professor Messer Study Group. Let me see if I can bring this up. I've noticed I've got to do something very quickly before we start taking questions from the chat room. So just a moment. I'm going to try doing this very, very quickly. Stick around. I will be right back. Now I have to find my F connector information. We'll find that in a moment where we can break that down and see where it is. In the meantime, I will let you know that if you'd like to ask a question, there is an embedded chat on the Professor Messer website at professormesser.com/live. It is the YouTube chat, effectively. So if you're on YouTube right now, it's the same chat. It's the one I've been looking at the whole time. Having this there. We got a lot to go through here. So I need to find that file as soon as I get my headphones back in. I left for a second. How can they be tangled this much? It's how headphones work, I think. I've been able to, with the wireless headsets on my mobile devices, I've kind of gotten away from untangling everything before I can make a phone call. Well, now I'm back to doing that in the studio. So that's the best way to have a look at this. So I want to show you what I have found regarding the F connector, and then we'll take questions from the chat room. We might take questions first because I have to find the thing that has the information about that connector. I have to remember where I put it. This is the problem. I think I know where it happens to be. I just have to find the file. I was working with it the other day, so I know it's around here somewhere. See how this works? That's usually how my world works, is I put it somewhere and then we break it down. In the meantime, I will, of course, have a look at what these happen to be. So a question from the chat room. We'll come back to the F connector in just a moment as I hunt this down and try to find out where I put everything. That was sort of something we did kind of ad hoc. So we'll hunt down where I put all of this. But a good question in the chat room from Trent asks, taking the Network Plus on the 25th of this month, one major thing I am stuck on is the 568A and 568B. Do I have advice for remembering them? I do. I just released a new 568A, 568B video. It's for A+, but it's probably the best one that I have had on 568A and 568B. It literally is one video on 568A and 568B. Let me find this video for you. I'm going to type some things in so we can hunt it down on my side. I'm going to go through my YouTube video layout, And this is, as I mentioned, currently in my A+ series, but it is a video on 568A and 568B colors. That's literally the name of the video. That's how specific I wanted to be sure you saw. So this is an entire video. There it is, 568A and 568B colors. Because a lot of people are asking this question because there seems to be, for some reason, a lot of confusion over what these are and what they're used for. In fact, a number of people have been come to me and say, how does the 568A and 568B relate to Ethernet crossover cables? And I make it clear in this video that they don't. They have nothing to do with crossover cables. This is about colors. That's it. What color wire you use. Has nothing to do with Ethernet. What it really does from an Ethernet perspective, eventually the standard we use for colors finds its way into how we punch things down for Ethernet, but there's no Ethernet in the 568 in the T568 standard. In the TIA 568 standard has nothing to do with Ethernet. It really doesn't. It has to do with standardizing what wires you use and how you use wiring. And the color part is simply a small part. It's a small piece of the 568 standard. So that is exactly the way that works. So hopefully that can help you as you're sort of going through this. I think it will really help you working through the details of it. So that is what I would recommend, is watching that video so you can really understand when would we use this, how would we use this. Now, if your question is about crossover cables, because some people do come to me and say, I need to know more about 568A and B because I have to do a crossover cable, which is, has nothing to do with each other. Those are two different things. And so there is a video coming out later in the A+ series. It's not been released yet, that is just on Ethernet crossover cables. And we really describe putting things in and how they would work. Do I touch on when to use one and the other? I do. Do I talk about what should be used by default in new installs? I do. So it's in there. So these are questions that come up all the time. So I think that's why I decided let's make a whole video just on 568A and 568B. So that is the real key, is figuring it out. And so I tried to give you a perspective of why we have this, why there are different colors, why these colors have nothing to do with Ethernet. So just go to the Professor Messer YouTube channel and type in 568A and 568B, or go to my A+, my 220-1101 series, and it's in my A+ videos for 568A and 568B. And if I think I got a link. I can just give you a link because I can put links into the chat room, can't I? We're about to find out. There's a link in the chat room for it. How about that? Don't want to go there right now. You want to watch me or not. You'll watch me stumble around as I try to find that document that I set aside that tells us all about Network Plus and where all of this information comes from. I think I know where it is. So I think it's in a very particular place. I think I even put it in a Network Plus study group so I would know where this was when I started working on it. Maybe it's not. Who knows where I put this? I'm going to see if I can find it really quick in my system, because I can type in some very specific search information. We're going to see if I can myself can remember what it happens to be as we start working through this. Maybe I won't find it. Maybe it's nowhere to be found and we'll never see it again. That's certainly possible too. It's really a challenge when I put things on my system. You can imagine there's information in all kinds of places. In the meantime, let's do another question and break this down. Since we did talk about this, there's a new A+ series out. I mentioned earlier about how we're making a lot of A+ videos right now. That A+ series is for the 220-1101 and 220-1102. This video that I've created is for the 1101. I don't know if you really can't see it there because it's down at the bottom, but it is the 220-1101 section 3.1 for that. That's where that video came from. So it does give you some insight into the things you need to know for the exam, and especially on the topics like this. For some reason, crossover cables in 568A and B are the types of questions that come up quite a bit. So I tried to find where this is. I found my document that tells you all about category A or the F connector. The F connector. Now let me figure out what page this is so I can hunt it down very quickly. So everybody just remember page X12. So I have got a document from, I want to say what year this is. Does it have the year? It's from 1967. A document from 1967, just so you know how far back the F connector is. This is a catalog from Gerald, J-E-R-R-O-L-D. It is their Antennas Reception and Distribution Catalog from 1967. So this has obviously been around for a while. And you can tell if you look at the catalog, yeah, that's old school right there. This is a company that made antennas, equipment for receiving television signals. It was a big deal, 1967, to be able to do this. So having the right antenna, putting the right antenna on, this is before cable television, obviously. So you had to have an antenna on your house. Everybody had an antenna to be able to receive the local signals and what was there. So in this catalog, there is information. I'm going to pull up the pages on this. They have some connectors, and I want to find exactly the right page for this because it really does tell a story about the specificity of the F connector and why we have the F connector. So I'm going to scroll through this while we're looking through this. What I found was pretty interesting is that I just assumed it stood for something, that there was something we would do with this. The reality is, though, no, there really isn't. And I want to be sure I find exactly the right page. I feel like I'm missing some pages in this, or I'm skipping over them to be able to find. It's got preamps. We have antennas, converters, taps, attenuators, all this just to receive a television signal. But there's the interesting part of this is that there are different connectors made by Gerald. For example, the G connector. That's right, the G series. There is a G59, a PG59, a G56. There are the C connectors for the C series, like a C52, be a good example of a C connector. And then there are F connectors. So kind of a boring answer, but they're called F connectors because the company that made an F connector really focused on all of this. So I think that's that they made A connectors, B connectors, C connectors, D connectors. This just happened to be the F part of the answer. Now, some of these other connectors like C connectors and G connectors and other things, we just didn't really catch on. You can see that we don't use this. How about an A connector? An AF101. I guess technically it's the F series, right? The F91 coupling. Those are looking very familiar. So some of these F connectors are just very generic ways to describe what we use today. Others are very different. So that's where the F came from. It doesn't stand for anything. It doesn't stand for frequency. It doesn't stand for RF, radio frequency. It doesn't stand for anything. It's just it was next on the list and it stuck. So I guess it took all the way to F before they came up with a connector that everybody decided, yeah, let's stick with that one. It really worked fine. So that was why we came up with F connector. There you go. So that's not a fun answer, not a very interesting answer, I would say even, but it is the answer. That's at least locks that down for people that are trying to figure out what does that stand for. It doesn't stand for anything. What is an abbreviation for? It's not abbreviation for anything. It's just the letter F. That is an F connector. So solve that little mystery. Put that one in. I'm glad somebody asked about it so we could kind of bring it up in the study group so you could see where that came from, what we would do with it. That's it. Well, we've got now that I'm done with my little F connector story for whatever that's worth, We're more than happy to answer any questions you might have. If you are watching this on my website, there is an embedded chat that's on the page. That's technically this chat. It's the one at professormesser.com/live. That is the YouTube chat that I've embedded onto my website. So if you're watching this on YouTube or on the YouTube app, it's the same chat. I'm watching the same thing go by. So if you have any questions about Network Plus, A+, technology in general, things that you're seeing in the world, you're more than welcome to put those in to figure out if I have an answer for it. I don't know that I will have an answer, but I'll be glad to give it a shot. Speaking of which, we have a question in the chat room. Do I know when the A+ 1101 and 1102 course will be done? Nope, have no idea. I don't. I'll talk about that in a moment. Second part of the question says, do you think your course for the 1001 and 1002 is a viable way to practice for the 1101 and 1102? Absolutely not. You shouldn't do that. Very bad idea. Super bad idea. Pretty bad idea. Don't do that. Always study from materials that match the version of the exam that you're going to take. In the 1101 and 1102, there is roughly 35% of the content is brand new. So if you studied from the 1001 and 1002 and then walked into the 1101 and 1102, the best score you could possibly get is 70, maybe a 65%. I know we don't do this by percentage. It's not a percentage type result, but I'm kind of talking in broad terms here. So that's not the position you want to be in. You would like to have a maximum of 100% right. And then if you get something wrong, we can take that off the top. Imagine starting the exam at 65%. You're going to fail. So that's just that's not a good idea. That's not what you should be doing. Never, never, never do that. There are limited study materials available right now for the 1101 and 1102, which is, I suspect, why a number of people ask this question. You're not the only one. So I tell people, if you're studying right now, you're starting your studies for the A+, go take the 1101 and 1102. There's 3 years worth of content out there. You don't have to have it done until October the 20th. You've got nearly 5 months now. You got effectively 5 months before that goes away. That's still plenty of time. So I think it's pretty important for you to always know what you should study from. And that's an important part of this. Now, the first part of your question, which was, when's this going to be done? I don't know. I don't have a formal production schedule. I make them as fast as I can. I want it done now. I'd like them done today, but there's a physics problem involved here. So I sit down, I shoot a bunch of videos, then I sit down and edit a bunch of videos, and then I post them on YouTube. So that's the way the process works. So I don't have anything in a calendar. It's not like I have a calendar that says on Tuesday, you'll be recording 10 videos. On Wednesday, you'll be editing those 10 videos. And then on Thursday, you'll be shooting another 10 videos. I don't know. Each video is a different amount of time. Some require some setup beforehand. Some require some demonstration. Some are more difficult to edit than others. Sometimes we have things we have to fix. Once we have it in post, I edit the video and I realize, oh, I said something wrong, or this isn't as clear as I would like it to be. And I scrap it and I go back and I record it again. So the only way I can have the flexibility to give you what I consider to be the best possible version of these study materials is not to set myself to any particular time frame. And so when people ask, when's this going to be done, I absolutely understand why you're asking, and I'm with you. I'd like it to be done as quickly as possible, but I just can't tell you because I don't know. In the coming weeks, this will be completed. That's all I can tell you. How many weeks? I don't know. It's done when it's done. I think that's really the best way to do it. It's not that I'm holding back, and it's not that I don't want it to get done quickly. It's just that if I set an arbitrary date based on a ton of variables that could absolutely change between now and then, it does nobody any good, because you would have an expectation that would be done by then. I would have pressure on me to get them done by that particular date. It's a recipe for a poor quality. It is absolutely a recipe for poor quality. The best possible quality would be I do them as quickly as I can, as good as I could possibly do, and then publish that to you. So the answer is that they're going to get done pretty quickly. I'm churning through these as fast as I possibly can. I just can't give you a date. But it's not going to be long. It's going to be a month or two, and then they'll all be done, and then nobody will ask the question anymore. But in the meantime, I understand why you're asking, is that we just don't know. And that's another reason I think I'm not the only person working on this content right now. You've probably noticed there's not a lot of 1101 and 1102 books on the market. There's not a lot of 1101 and 1102 videos on the market. There's limited study materials. There's limited labs. It's limited. These exam objectives were released publicly a month ago, less than a month ago. So it hasn't even been out a month yet. It takes time to create all of this content. It takes time for publishers to create books, to write books, and to put them out. So that's why I tell you it's going to be a little bit of time. I realize everybody, I wish we had these available on day one, but as I mentioned, it's a physics problem. They still continue to only give me 24 hours in a day. And as soon as they can change that, the videos will go out quicker. Until then, we just kind of have to work that through. Other questions. This is on, and to that point, once you are A+ certified, the version of the exam you took is irrelevant. Employers do not care which version of the exams you take. All they care about is that if you're A+ certified. Let me give you an example of how this really works. Let's say you were A+ certified 10 years ago. And over that 10-year period, every 3 years you have renewed your certification so that your A+ continues to be in good standing. That today, as we sit here, you continue to be A+ certified because you have renewed your certification throughout that 10-year period. If somebody took the 1101 and 1102 exams today with the limited amount of study materials, but maybe they're smart and they take those two exams and they get certified today on the 1101 and 1102, they're A+ certified. And as it turns out, they're just as A+ certified as the person who got certified 10 years ago. They're just as certified as somebody who has their certification on by taking the 1001 and 1002 exams. You're A+ certified. So it doesn't matter how you get certified. The important part is that you have the certification. So that's why I tell people, take the exam that has 3 years worth of books and videos and practice exams and labs and everything else, and take the easy way to your A+. Certainly, relatively speaking, the easy way. It's not easy to get an A+ certification, but that's it. That's where that comes from. When I talked about percentages, and I said you really can't calculate a percentage on the exam, that part's true. On the exam, each question is worth a different number of points. So there is no way to get a percentage on the exam. There is no normal percent. It's impossible to calculate. So we don't do it. You have to earn a 720 on a scale from 100 to 900. That's it. Is that 620 points then? Maybe, I guess. Out of 800? I don't know. And it's not a percentage. So it's just complicated. Just do the best you can. It's hard to calculate. I think that's by design. I think that's exactly why they do it that way. So you really can't go by percentage. You can't go by number of questions because each question is worth a different amount. I think that's really it. A number of topics on the exam. So Peter asks, I'm having trouble remembering these topics in wireless networking like IBSS, BSS, ESS. I don't know that you have to remember the DSSS, FHSS, or OFDM. The signaling types are interesting, but I don't think necessarily you have to get a lot of memorization. The ones you definitely need to know are the basic and extended service sets. Those are pretty important, especially when you're configuring a wireless access point. So focus on that. I've got some great videos on those with graphics that show how you would use that, how they're designed. It's also in my course notes. Now, those give you a nice little diagram of what is, in this diagram, what is the BSSS? What is the ESS? You've got a nice breakdown of those in that graphic, just to give you kind of a feel for how those would work through the pieces. That's the important part. Would it be useful to collect CEUs right after passing the exam? Well, the first time you can start to collect CEUs is after you're certified. You can't collect CEUs before you are certified. So that would be the only way to collect CEUs is after you pass the exam. And yeah, you can start collecting them immediately. I have questions about how the renewal timeframes work. I've got a question I need to send in to my folks at CompTIA to answer that for me. But that's another one that I think would be good to know about, which is when you renew, what is the renewal? Does it just add on another 3 years, or does it start a new clock ticking on the date that you renewed? And it's changed over time, so I just wanted to get clarification. I don't know the answer to that yet, and I will get that answer. So stay tuned. I guess watch the Twitter, maybe I'll stick it on the YouTube and on the other places. We'll have to get that answer out there since I figure out what it is. Can you tell us what an old certification that's GFL is still worth? For those of you that haven't been around in CompTIA for very long, back in the day, prior to 2011, when you earned an A+ certification, that certification was GFL. It was good for life. And it was that way all the way up until 2011. And then at that time, CompTIA changed over these certifications that instead of being good for life, they had an expiration date. So you earn your certification today, and it's good for 3 years. And if you want to maintain that certification, you have to renew it before that 3-year date is over. And then you get another 3 years when you renew it. And that's that time frame I was talking about earlier. The question, though, was what about folks that earn their certification prior to 2011? They have an A+ certification that's technically GFL. If you have a later certification that has the 3-year time frame, you'll notice the certification is labeled as A+ CE, continuing education. So the CE that's added to your cert, if you ever got a new cert and you're thinking, why'd they stick the CE on the end? That's why. The CE shows you that it is the renewable certification that is a newer cert than the GFL certifications. But to your question, what is a GFL still worth? The answer is not a lot. Employers aren't looking for GFL certs. In fact, many job postings clearly say we want you to be A+ CE certified. Plus, if you earned a certification from 2011, then you're probably very familiar with Windows NT, and maybe it was a newer one. So maybe you're familiar with Windows XP. And so you can see that those older GFL certs have a limited range when it comes to the more modern systems, operating systems, and hardware. So that's why employers don't really put a lot of emphasis on GFL. The reason it got shifted to the 3-year cycle is that internationally, ISO created standards for certifications. And those standards require that the people maintaining the certifications constantly update that cert so that they are always up to date with the latest technologies, which is a pretty good idea, technically, especially when you think that your A+ from 2011 that you still have really doesn't apply to modern technologies. So that's why they ask you to do that. Now, a lot of people don't want to renew, or they don't feel it's necessary to renew, but that's completely up to you. It may be 3 years from now that you've moved on into a networking job, or maybe you've got a job working in security, or maybe you're working with Linux, or you're doing something other than the entry level, and you might make a decision at that point that, okay, I'll let my A+ expire, and I'll go get some other certifications that are more specific to what I'm doing today. But you can continue to renew it. There's a lot of different ways to renew your A+ certification. For those of you that would like an overview of those different ways, if you go to my CompTIA channel or to my YouTube channel, one of the CompTIA videos I have is how to renew your CompTIA certification very quickly. In fact, I'll find the one that I created, which was how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus certification in just a few hours, as crazy as that sounds. So there it is. How to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus in just a few hours. That's the name of it. It's on my channel, ProfessorMesser.com. And I do tell you about the few hours part. CertMaster CE, some of the CertMaster CE renewal options will require more than a few hours these days. They've upped it so that it takes a few more. But if you're really good at it, maybe it only takes a few hours. But another thing I do in this video is I go through all of the different ways to renew your cert. and I give you advantages and disadvantages of each one. So you could take a higher level CompTIA cert. That's one way to renew. You could take a higher level third-party cert like Microsoft or Cisco. That's another way to renew. You could take the A+ exams or Network Plus or Security Plus exams again. If you're crazy, you could do that, but it is a valid way to renew your cert. So you could do that. Obviously, there are some big advantages and disadvantages of that. You could collect continuing education units, CEUs. There's advantages and disadvantages there. And there is a product that CompTIA creates that is a Cert Master CE, and that's how you can renew in just a few hours. So if you're down to the wire and it's maybe the last day that you could possibly renew your cert, Cert Master CE is probably for you. And this video describes all of those. I described the 3-year cycle. I described how you would find CEUs, how you would earn higher level CompTIA, how you would get third-party certs, advantages and disadvantages, take the test again, and then renewing in 4 to 6 hours with Cert Master CE, and I explain what that's about and the pricing and how it could save or not save you money. It's all in that video, how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus in just a few hours. So there you go. I'm not sure I really needed a comma there. We'll have to go back and see if an Oxford comma made sense there, and being able to work through that. I think that's the real key, is working through those. I think if you were somebody who was trying to renew, it would be important to know all the different ways to do this. So please go through and become familiar with them. I think it's one of the best ways to go about it. Question here. I'm interested in getting my Network Plus cert and planning on watching your playlist to learn, but I'm looking for a book to study as well. Do I have recommendations? Well, I have some recommendations on my website. There's obviously tons of books available in the world for Network Plus. Of course, on my site are both the Network Plus, the 007 and 008. If you just look at the 008 study recommendations, since we're sort of in that world of 008, of course, my videos are in there. The one that I recommend is from CompTIA, because as I mentioned, I know the people that wrote it. I personally have worked with the people that write these books. So the Network Plus study guide on the CompTIA website is one that I recommend. If you buy it through my site, you not only get a discount from the CompTIA price, but I throw in my course notes for free. So I give you some benefit if you're buying it on my site, so that you can just get both of those. You're done. If you already have the course notes, there should be an upgrade link in your member login that allows you to purchase this at a discount because you've already paid for course notes. So it's another thing. Also on this page are the questions from CompTIA. I call this my Ultimate Study Pack, which is really a book, some labs, some performance-based questions, some sample exams. They sort of put everything in one product, so you don't even need a book. Everything is online. The book is sort of integrated into the whole thing with CertMaster Learn, and it comes with my Success Bundle. You get everything with this Ultimate Study Pack. Not only everything I do for Network Plus, but everything CompTIA does, almost everything CompTIA does for Network Plus. They have some great labs. If you haven't seen them, I demonstrate them. Every single one of these on my site has a little video that goes along with it. So you can kind of go through the labs and see, how do these labs work? You can see me working with Windows Server here in one of these Network Plus labs and working through it. That's the interactive pack. And then lastly is the practice test pack. So you've got other resources here to choose from. Of course, the videos are always free. You can always find them on my website or on YouTube. There's nothing there. But there's some options, obviously, you can choose from on the Network Plus side. So it's up to you. Figure out what makes the most sense. So how do you sign up for this? Another question in the chat room. You can sign up by visiting the CompTIA website. They have a link right on the site that can help you determine where you would go to take these exams. The CompTIA website, if we go to certifications, I'm most interested in Network Plus for this study group. And you got options here to buy the exam. So you can, of course, go sit for the exam. They do give you some options for buying vouchers from their site. You can compare that to the price that's on the Professor Messer website if you'd like to save a little money. They have other bundles, too, that go along with this. That's one way to do it. They also have, for prep on their site, you got some options of things that you can do. There's a lot there to to pull from. So that's your best place to go. CompTIA website will tell you exactly where to go to sign up. It effectively, worldwide, takes you to the Pearson VUE website. They're the company that manages the testing process for CompTIA. So if you end up on a site and you're thinking, this is Pearson VUE, that's why. Pearson VUE does the testing. CompTIA manages that process. So it's a bit of a partnership between those two. In the chat room, Aaron asks, are you planning on making a Linux Plus course? Well, not today, but how about in the future? Maybe, sort of. It's on a list somewhere. Linux Plus is always on the list, it seems. Is it at the top of the list? Probably not. But then again, things change all the time. I'll take today's a perfect example of the list in my head of what certification I'm doing next is constantly bouncing around. And I mention this because today, Apple announced a new set of certifications that they are offering on their site through their own training methods. I have to find it because now the things that were there yesterday are no longer there. Let me see. Here it is. I've got the link right here on the Apple website. New professional training for a growing IT workforce. So they're jumping into, they've already had certifications in the past, but it hasn't really been anything too formalized or really pushed from Apple. But I was looking through this and thinking, okay, here's another one that I now need to jump through to be able to do all of this. I need to find a way to do these, or at least put this in my list. So they have an app developer training. Ugh, don't want that. IT training, that's what I want. And they have different IT training options that are available. They have one that is an Apple device support, which I think would be valuable for folks. I guess that's it. That's the one they do. They have a device support. Oh, they have deployment management. So they have two certifications that you could choose. Let's do device support, and let's look at the exam preparation guide. This is their exam objectives, which are nothing like the CompTIA exam objectives, but they're not bad. They give you at least an overview, how to take the exam, how to prep for the exam details. Here are the objectives. So, introduction to the Apple ecosystem, what's new in macOS and iOS and iPadOS. Recognize iCloud capabilities, identify when family sharing impacts BYOD devices, troubleshoot iCloud features, and recognize MDM settings that supersede the iCloud features. Two-factor authentication for Apple ID, account troubleshooting, installation updates, procedures, you get it. So this is the brand new, just released today, Apple certifications. Now, I see that, and as someone who makes certification videos, I'm thinking, oh, maybe I could do this. That's what happens to me every day. I look at something and think, oh, should I add this to the list? Where would it go in the list? So this is something for me that just happens constantly. So when people ask, am I planning on doing Linux Plus? I don't know, maybe. Am I planning on doing Apple? I don't know, maybe. We never know until I start, until I finally lock it down. Every day is different. So that's why I tell people, I don't know. It could be one I do. It might not be one I do. I just never know. It's always going to be something different for me every day. And today's another example of that, of not really knowing. Now, I probably won't make any Apple videos. I don't think it will. I think I would probably do Linux Plus before doing an Apple certification course, but I don't know. You know, what if this suddenly becomes the thing? I don't know. We have to watch for those. But right now, Linux Plus is on the list. It's not at the top of the list, but these things change, and we'll just have to see. It's just one of those things we work through. Other questions from the chat room. Why are prices different for CompTIA, for example, in South Africa? Well, because prices and currencies are different all over the world. And what different companies charge in different places is also very different. So prices will be different. If you go to the CompTIA store, you can click on, if you're in North America, you click the North America link at the top of the page. I don't know why I'm explaining this. I could just go to the store and show you that if you were going to buy something from CompTIA, they have a whole setup: North America, South America, Europe, Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Central Asia, and Africa. So you would put in your country. Let's say you're from Ecuador, and everyone from Ecuador goes to the global CompTIA page. There it is. So your pricing is now for the global page for vouchers, for example, and how much they are. These are, interestingly, on the global site, they list the prices in USD, which I would imagine, can we change USD? I bet you can. It's probably in here somewhere, probably part of your profile. I don't know. I don't manage the CompTIA store, thankfully. But yes, it is very different depending on where you are in the world. There's different currencies they accept depending on where you are in the world. This is one of the reasons I only provide vouchers today for US and Canada effectively. So other countries, it becomes complicated to work with the vouchers in that particular market and manage the different currencies in that market. You can imagine there's complexities associated with that. Now, I'm trying to work through some of those complexities, but I do keep hitting a number of very solid walls when I try to work through that. And I think to myself, this would be so much easier if it was just all cryptocurrency. We wouldn't have to fight with these different currencies that we're working with. We would all be on this one system. But then, of course, as you know, that would be the apocalypse. So this is the problem. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just, that's one of the arguments, I think, against using cryptocurrency, is that the world could end. I'm guessing. Isn't it that the argument for everything, though? I think it is. So that's why the prices are different. That's why it's hard to find exactly what you're looking for if you're in another country. But I always tell people, just go to the Pearson VUE or go to the CompTIA store, and that's the best place to go if you can't find it anywhere else. Is it a premium that you're paying? Probably. But if it's nowhere else, you don't really have a choice. So finding a partner, a CompTIA partner in your particular country can be pretty valuable, can provide you with some advantages. So that's what I would recommend. Speaking of Network Plus, question from Benny, is it better to study the Network Plus instead of the CCNA if I will not be working with Cisco devices? It might be better to study the Network Plus instead of the CCNA if you are working with Cisco devices. The CCNA is the Cisco Certified Network Administrator certification exam. There's a number of CCNAs now. They've restructured everything over the last number of years. But what I tell people, and perhaps it's sort of missed on a number of folks, the Cisco CCNA exams are not entry-level exams by any stretch of the imagination. They are probably second-tier certification exams. They are not an exam I would throw a starter into technology and say, go get your CCNA. I know that you will find many resources on the internet that will tell you to do exactly that. And they will tell you, why are you spending time getting an entry-level cert? Go get a higher-level cert like CCNA, and you'll move up even faster. I guess they're not wrong. But why are you even stopping there? Why don't you just get your CCIE? Why don't you just become the CEO of the company? You know, there's a reason we start at a certain place and we move up from there. We need a foundation. We need a starting point. We need something that can give us enough to then build on to go to the next level. And I think Network Plus is a great place to start to build that foundation so that when you start your CCNA routing and switching studies, you already know how routers work. You already know how switches work. You already understand there's things such as port mirroring and port security and spanning tree protocol and default routes and all of these things we've already talked about. And you don't have to go through the process of now learning those while at the same time learning how to build a switch from the ground and add at the command line all of the commands you need to know to manage that device and troubleshoot it. And then do the same thing for routers. And then do the same thing for APIs. And then do the same thing for voice. You know, CCNA is a tough exam. It is a challenging exam. There's a reason people hold it in such high regard, because it is a difficult exam to pass. But I would never throw someone new to the industry into a Cisco exam, the CCNA's type of Cisco exams, that just doesn't make for the best possible scenario. If you want the best possible scenario, then maybe start with the Network Plus, and then later on you can ease into the CCNA routing and switching. However, I'll give you the standard response, though, is that let's say you already have a foundation. You've been working at the help desk for a year. You've got an understanding of Windows at the command line. You've worked a little bit with Cisco at the command line. You've been doing some networking, so you sort of understand a little bit of the networking place. And you've said to yourself, you know what I want to do? I want to go work as a switch administrator, a network administrator, a router administrator. I want to manage the WAN. I want to manage these network links. That's definitely what I want to do. And I definitely want to do it with Cisco products. Pretty much everybody has Cisco products at this point. So for those people, maybe it does make sense to jump over Network Plus with the understanding that they're going to have to spend a little bit more time on the fundamentals as they're going through their CCNA studies. That's not overwhelming. That's not a deal breaker. That's certainly possible. And it gives you the opportunity at least to level set in your mind what you're going to need to do to get through the CCNA routing and switching. So that's why I tell people you could skip everything. The real question, though, and the one that probably is missed by most people who ask questions about certifications, or I'd say answer questions about certifications, is this. So here's the common question you see on the Reddit, on the Discord, on the wherever you go. They say, I've got a choice of what I could take. Should I go take the Network Plus, the Cisco routing and switching, the CCNA, or should I go take the Microsoft Cloud, one of the Microsoft Cloud certifications? And people will say, oh, you should take CCNA. Oh, you should take Network Plus. Oh, you should take Microsoft. They'll just chime in. Here's the one you need to take. Oh, and then they start fighting. Well, you're crazy to take the Microsoft stuff. The Cisco stuff will move your way up. Well, why would you take Cisco stuff when you can get the Network Plus and get the foundation in before you even need to get that job? Yeah, but the Microsoft stuff they just fight about it all day. So the real question is, what are you trying to do? That's the correct answer when somebody asks that question of, should I take the Network Plus, Cisco, CCNA, or Microsoft Azure? Do you have a job lined up? Have you looked at job postings in your area? What certifications are they asking for the most? What are you interested in doing? Are there certain things that you know you would like to work into, or certain interests you really have? For me, I loved networking. The moment I found out that there was packets going over the network that you could view, you could look at them, and you could see how they were constructed, and you could start seeing conversations between devices, that was it for me. I'm like, Windows? I don't need to do Windows anymore. I want to do networking. How do I do this? It literally changed my career when I saw my very first sniffer. My very first protocol decode changed everything. And so I thought, let's go do networking. This is great. I really have an interest in this. And I started learning everything I could. That was back before the days of Network Plus and Cisco, because all we had was rocks and chisels at that point. It was very basic. But at that point, now you have an interest, and you might say, there's some job postings in my area. They want the type of experience I already have, but they want me to be Cisco certified. Let me go get the Cisco cert. Or maybe you're going through all of, not Vampire Taps, MALs. That's what I was working with. So as you were going through the list of everything you need to do, you should look at what you want to do. What's your next step up? What's your next upgrade? What's your next level up in your career? Is it with Linux? Is it with Microsoft? Is it with the cloud? Is it with databases? Is it with networking? You have an entire world to choose from. There are jobs in all of these areas in IT. It is the broadest, most flexible, most upwardly mobile place to work in the world is information technology. It's hard to find anything else that compares to the flexibility and the upward mobility that IT brings. So with that in mind, you get to decide. Don't let other people tell you what cert you should get. You should do the research yourself, do the studies of what's available in your area, kind of compare that and contrast that with what you would like to do, and then go get the correct certification for what you're trying to accomplish. That's the right answer. Now, that might be a Cisco certification. It might be Network Plus. It might be a Microsoft Azure cert, or it might be something else that we haven't even talked about yet. You won't know until you finally go do the work. So the work is not asking other people what you should do. The work is you setting up your own path. Everybody has a different path to go from place to place within IT. You need to decide what that path is. Sometimes it's a path that you can easily lay out. You can set a very specific set of goals. You can decide on this date, I'm going to start studying. I'm going to earn my certification by this day. I'm going to send out some resumes by this day, and I'll have a new job by this day. That's a great path. You should do that. That's fantastic. What sometimes happens, though, is you say, I'm going to start studying for this, and then I'm going to take the certification exam. Oh, I just got a job offer for something completely different over on this side that has to do with cloud. I don't know. So suddenly, where you think you're going suddenly changes based on jobs available in your area. Technology changes dramatically. This happens all the time. Suddenly, a certain technology blows up. We're seeing a huge increase in the number of data-driven jobs right now. So if you are somebody who has, this is not really an IT job. I realize that CompTIA does have a Data Plus, and they're doing other data-related certifications. I don't necessarily think a data analyst position is an IT position. But for the purposes of our conversation here, let's sort of lump them together. Is that there's a series of technologies around storing and retrieving large amounts of data that there are now jobs available for this that weren't there before. That's a really good example of where you may already have experience in working with large data sets and being able to retrieve and work with very large amounts of data. So maybe that's a job that would be perfect for you. Suddenly now you thought you were going one direction, and then suddenly the industry turned you another way. So that's a good example. There's lots of little places like that in the industry right now. Something like what they're calling a DevOps position, which is sort of an odd conglomeration. I think originally it was designed to be developers who can manage an operational side. I got to tell you, the last people you want managing operations is a developer. That is just a recipe for problems. And as it turns out, that's exactly what it turned out to be. For many of those folks, they found that, yeah, that has been a bit of a problem. And in fact, what this kind of evolved into to be people who are good with operations who can automate. They can write Perl scripts, shell scripts, batch files, or are very good with Python, very good with PowerShell. You know, those are the people they want. That's effectively what this has turned into, is someone with some automation skills. I won't call it programming and I won't call it development because it really isn't, but someone who can script, someone who can automate, and who is able to make all of this automation and scripting work in any type of environment, mostly cloud-based. So there's a huge set of jobs right now where that is a priority. So I know this is sort of a long answer to what is effectively the question of, do I go get my CCNA or not? But the answer is not a yes. It's not a no. It's about what you want to do and what options are available for you. There are things that have happened in my career I did not see coming that completely changed. Well, it changed my life, changed everything I did, changed my entire direction. So you have to just be open for it. You have to be available for whatever comes your way. When someone called me out of the blue and said, hey, do you want to go work for a company that makes next generation firewalls? And it could have been that I could have said, next generation firewalls? What is that? That doesn't even sound like a thing. I'm not interested. Thanks so much. You know, that would have been an enormous mistake. But I wasn't. I was kind of open for this, going, tell me more about this. What is this next generation firewall you speak of? What is this strange magic? And they explained to me what this strange magic was. And it was brand new, and the industry's never seen it before. And it was literally something that was going to change how we look at security on our enterprise networks. And nobody had seen this before. It was brand new. And I started looking at it and said, wow, is this real? Does this work? Because if this works, it's a game changer. And they said, oh, yeah, it works. Here, come see. They showed it to me. And I thought, wow, I'd love to work here. And they said, well, we don't want to hire you. This is a good story, isn't it? After all that, it turns out they said, well, we don't want to hire you. And it effectively turned into many people saying, please, please hire me. Please. And they did. They took a chance, and it worked out. So that was a good example of how just driving down the road, minding my own business, doing my day-to-day in my existing job, and just something comes out of the blue, calls me and changes the direction of what I'm doing in my career. Turns out that happens all the time in IT. So another good thing to think about here is that any decision you make about your career and what your next job is going to be and what you think you'd like to do next is not going to be what you do the rest of your career. And in fact, there have been times when I've made decisions about my career and I've made decisions about what job I'm taking next that have been bad decisions. And then you look back afterwards and you think, why did I take that job? There were an enormous number of red flags. This was not a good move for me. It personally, mentally, professionally, it was just a bad idea. You stay there 9 months and you sort of, or a year, and then you sort of go to the next thing. I work sort of, those jobs for me in my career have really mirrored Star Trek movies. The story with Star Trek movies is that every other movie seemed to be the good movie. Like if they just had a good Star Trek movie, the next one's going to be bad. The one after that'll be good, then the next one's bad. So every other movie is good, every other movie is bad. That's my career in IT. It seems I would find a really good job, and then the next one would not be so great. And I had this run of good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. I don't know why I couldn't see it. I don't know. That's what happened. And that last, the sort of what I ended on was the next generation firewall company. That was the last time I worked for someone else. And now we just do this all the time. So turns out both of my last ones were good jobs, good jobs. Really, the last three were pretty good. I got into a role where I could finally see the red flags. It took me some time, but after a while you start to find them. And more importantly, you start to notice them and react to them. It's one thing to see the red flag. I think we always see the red flag, but we sometimes try to rationalize that, no, it'll be okay. You know, so they yell a lot. Who doesn't? So the working environment here seems to be rustic. Oh, everybody who does technology works from a log cabin. It's normal. You know, those things you sort of rationalize out of existence because you really want that job. Turns out the red flags are there for a reason. The idea, though, is that as you go through your career, even if you get into one of these situations where you think you've got a path, you've worked towards a certification, you've followed the path, you've got that new job, you may realize this is not what I thought it was going to be. This is not the job. Well, it's a good thing you're in IT because you can go do anything else. You have the option, unlike other careers you may have chosen, in IT, you can do whatever you want. You just need to study up on those technologies and off you go. That's what you should focus on. Don't worry so much that the decision you're making now is going to lock you into a particular thing. That's other people. That's other jobs. That's other careers. In IT, you have flexibility. So don't worry so much. Don't put so much emphasis on that thing you're doing next, and just be flexible for whatever comes. And I think you'll be in good shape. Other things in the chat room, TJ made an interesting comment that says, learning about ethical hacking and pen testing has intrigued me to learn Security Plus. Would that be a good cert to get after Network Plus? What a perfect example of the question that I was just mentioning. So would it be a good cert to get after Network Plus? I don't know. What do you want to do in your career? Where are you now? What information do you want to learn? Obviously, the ethical hacking and pen testing has interested you. What jobs are available in your area as a good next step towards that? Do you have knowledge in operating systems? Do you have knowledge in networking? And I'm not just talking about A+ knowledge. Do you have expertise in Windows? Do you have expertise in Linux? Do you have an expertise in networking technologies? That's what you need to be able to then get a job that is dealing with IT security. Because IT security is a foundation of operating systems and networking with a layer of security right on top of that. So that's why I'll just turn it around. I'll put the mirror right back on you, which is, what do you want to do? What are you doing now? What jobs in your area? Where do you want to go? You know, that's the path. It could be that you look in your area, there are no ethical hacking jobs are difficult to come by. That's effectively pen testing. That's effectively what that is, penetration testing. There may be in your area limited pen testing jobs, or there might be a lot. And your skill set may not be ready for pen testing, but it might be ready for IT security. Because pen testing is a very different, very niche, very, it has a lot of requirements regarding your own personal knowledge. You need to know a lot about operating systems of many different kinds. You need to know a lot about networking and many different protocols. You need to know a lot about security in many different ways, both physical and otherwise. So I think pen testing has that allure online. It is marketed to us online. It is dangled in front of us like a carrot, as if that is the ultimate of ultimate jobs, when the reality is it's a very small niche of security jobs, especially relative to all of the other security jobs in the world. Pen testing is this tiny little thing. As it turns out, there are a much broader set of security jobs available in the world that have many, many different aspects to it. Maybe getting one of those jobs first will position you to move into a pen testing job later. That's my recommendation. Either that, or you know someone who works there and they're willing to overlook your shortcomings, and that's a different kind of problem, I guess, because then you have to know it. I think that's the challenge. Is you get thrown into one of these jobs, maybe they'll have good training. I don't think a lot of pen testing jobs are wanting to hold your hand, though. You know, they have some processes and procedures that are incredibly important. It's almost a legal job with pen testing. There are huge legal requirements and things you have to look out for. There have been cases where people doing pen testing have been arrested. They were legally, or I guess that's the real question, but they were put on a job. They have a contract. They have signed things. They have all of the documentation that says who they are and what they are doing, and they have the proper authority to do it, allegedly. And then they do it and they get arrested. Those things have happened in real life. So it's different. Pen testing's different than other IT security jobs. I have been in positions with IT security where I have had other people arrested because I've seen things on the network that were illegal and they needed to go to jail. So that's part of your job too. With pen testing, it's possible you could be the one arrested. You have to watch out for that. There's all kinds of issues doing those things. You just have to remember about it. But pen testing, I think they always mention that. They always dangle it online as, we'll put you through a pen testing boot camp. Come to us and you'll have everything you need to get that pen testing job. And as many of you know, and as I've said before, the boot camp idea, the 1 or 2 week boot camp, is in almost every scenario an enormous waste of your time and certainly a waste of your money. These 2 weeks to do anything is a ridiculous statement to make with technology. There is no way physically I could cram everything you need to know into a 2 week period to do a job like pen testing, or even to learn any certification exam. No, there's no 1 or 2 week program that's going to teach you everything you need to know. It's physically impossible. We talked about physics problems earlier. That's a physics problem. There's no way to have all of that happen. Now, they use that term boot camp, as a sort of a throwback to sort of a military exercise, because they're going to get a lot of information in you in a very quick amount of time. You can't do a push-up now. Well, at the end of this, you're going to do 100. That kind of thing, in the technology world of things. So I don't, and crash course is another good way to say it. Doesn't matter how you say it. There's no way to do everything you need to do in 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever the boot camp is. It doesn't work, because if you have enough knowledge in your brain to keep up with what's happening during that 1 week period, you probably didn't need to go to the boot camp. If you don't have the knowledge to be able to keep up with everything that's going on in that 1 week boot camp, then that was an enormous waste of your time. So that is why I have a problem with boot camps. They are worthless to the vast majority of people. They don't give you what you need. They don't help you. They're an enormous waste of your time. They're an enormous waste of your money. Now, there are organizations, I've seen community colleges, because they're the only ones apparently who are interested in teaching you things that might help you in your career. They will teach you everything you need to know to earn your CCNA routing and switching. I've seen classes like this, but they are 9-week classes. They are a semester of time. You're not doing this in 2 weeks. It's a well thought out, well structured set of exercises that includes time in a classroom. It includes an instructor who's knowledgeable. It includes lab time, all of that. And in most cases, less than a 1-week boot camp in cost. So that's why I will highly recommend you avoid anybody who's trying to sneak you through, to entice you to say boot camp and you can get that cybersecurity job. It doesn't work that way. It's never worked that way. And yet that's sort of the way the industry sort of leans. I think it's the thing about penetration testing in general is it's sexy and it's exciting and it's what you see in the movies, and we're hacking into systems and we got root and that's true. It is. It's fun. It's sort of you're knowledgeable at doing pen testing. You're working with other people who are knowledgeable in these technologies. It is fun to do. It's challenging. You have to keep up to date with the latest with vulnerabilities and attack types. It's a whole different niche, and it requires a certain level of knowledge to be able to do this. But it's only one tiny niche within a much larger IT security world. And if your goal is just to get a job in security and start making security money, there's many other jobs available that will give you that have nothing to do with pen testing. So that's what I tell people. And just avoid the idea of doing a boot camp. Anytime somebody says, here's a boot camp, immediately I'm suspicious of what they're doing. Tell me more about it. Is it a semester boot camp or is it a 1-week boot camp? Who's putting on this boot camp? Who is it a third-party profit-making organization? Is it a university or a college? Is it a manufacturer? What is it? Manufacturers usually don't do boot camps. So that's up to you. Spend your money however you would like. But that's just my approach with this and working through it. Other thoughts and ideas. If we are working through there, and in the chat room, everyone is correct. This applies to anything in IT. There's no shortcuts. Nobody's going to fast track you through into doing anything. There's a certain amount of experience and knowledge and practicality to what we do. So it's important that we get some hands-on with these technologies. You need stick time, you need keyboard time, you need time working with them, developing them, implementing them, understanding their limitations, understanding their strengths. Because once you implement them, now you can start to think about how would I design a network around these technologies, which is a completely different set of conversations to have. My last position working as a systems engineer, that's what I did every day. I'd walk into a meeting, we would talk about these technologies, and then they would say, well, where would it fit in our environment? Well, let's do some Q&A, let's do some whiteboarding, let's draw just a simple diagram of the way your network is laid out, and here's some options. And we would build them out based on the protocols, the connectivity, the requirements they have for security, the gaps they had, the things they wanted to accomplish. All of that goes into the planning process. And you never get planning done in one meeting, but now you're able to more accurately design a new network configuration or a new security implementation that meets some of their specific requirements, and everybody has their own requirements. You have to first install it to be able to talk about what would be best during the installation. And that's why boot camps and other of these get security quick schemes just does not compute. It doesn't work. So don't rely on that. That's my personal opinion of those. Some of you that have been to boot camps, I've been to boot camps. So I'm sort of speaking in personal terms. I've been to more than one from many different companies. And I've been, as a manufacturer's representative for these technologies, I've been to sort of our own boot camps, but our own when you work for a company that makes the product, your training is very different than a boot camp. And your foundation of all of the resources you have available are vastly different. You have tons of people back at corporate. You've got technical representatives all over the world. You've got other SEs you can ping that you're in constant communication with. That's a very different scenario than a boot camp. So that's my recommendation. Some of you in the chat room have mentioned, yeah, but they're sending me to the boot camp. It doesn't cost me anything. Okay, somebody else has made a bad decision, but that's okay. You still get to go to the boot camp for a week. Learn as much as you can. Somebody's sending you there, so don't waste the time. But absolutely take into account just how much information is being thrown at you. Something's going to be cut. Something they're going to go through fast. Some things they just won't bring up because, again, physics. That's the problem. More questions in the chat room. Will I make a fill-in-the-blank course? This one for CCNA. I don't know. Maybe. We don't know. Right now, I'm making an A+ course. I know what I'm doing today. I don't know what I'm doing later. Later this year, I will imagine I will be in a position to... I have finished A+. I've created some Network Plus practice exams. And I'm sort of at a point where, okay, now let's do another course. I have to make that decision. So come back in a couple of months and we'll see where I am. I don't know. I'll tell you, I'd love to do a Linux Plus course. I would love to do a CCNA course. I would love to do some Microsoft courses. I would love to do some Google courses. I'd like to do some Apple courses. I'd like to do everything, but I can't. So I don't know. We'll figure that out later. Is there a field in IT that doesn't require me to talk too much to people? Well, I would say yes. Probably not IT as much as others. Computer science definitely is one that doesn't require you to talk too much to people. I'm not that social of a person. I really love IT. I just want to do my job and get out. There are jobs like that in IT. You know, a network administrator job, a tier 3 operating system administrator. You know, those are jobs where you're effectively communicating to other operating system administrators, other Linux admins, other network admins, other security admins. You're sort of at that, you're talking amongst a bunch of other technical people in your own group, and very rarely would you be talking to end users in that particular job. There's something, it's not something I can put my finger on, but the better you get at communicating with others in IT especially, the more valuable you will be as an employee, as a prospective employee. The easier it will be for you to move up and level up. If you can, and this is something that does not come normally. I don't think anybody is born to stand up in front of a large group of people and start speaking. I think that is a set of skills that you must hone over time. You have to, it's a different set of things that you have to have ready to go when you step on that stage. I have been through extensive presentation training. I have done by some of the largest and most well considered training companies in the world for this type of thing. I've been to courses where all they taught you was how to speak to others. That's how important the company I was working for really felt that their technical teams be able to communicate with the people that need these products. And there is some of this in the chat rooms. Folks are going, well, it's a bit of a trial by fire. You get up on the stage and you go, and you sort of figure it out as you go. And that's true to some degree. You don't know what it's going to be like until you get on the stage. But there are things you can do to properly prepare you, to teach you how to stand, to teach you what to do with your hands when you're standing on stage. You ever see people standing on stage and they're looking like they're ready to set a pick in basketball, like they're ready for somebody to hit them in the chest, so they're protecting themselves. So their hands are in the front, and they've clasped their hands. They're ready for the center to come down the lane so they can set the pick and have somebody hit the jump shot. That's just a weird way to stand. And if you start looking for it, you realize there's a picture here of a whole bunch of people standing like they're ready to set a pick. The one I think is one of the first things they teach you in these classes is how to stand. Don't say anything, just stand there. Do I do something? Do I need to hold something? Do I pick something? What do? I don't know what to do with my hands. And you just put them at your side. You learn how to put your arms at your side and stand there in silence and look at people. You know, that was the first task we did. And it was really uncomfortable. If you've never done this before, you stand there with your arm. You're thinking your hands should be in front of you, maybe behind you. No, you just put them at your side. And then if you watch the video of you standing there, then you see it looks perfectly normal. But to you, it felt weird. It felt like that wasn't quite right. It turns out it was exactly right. They were correct when they said, just stand there with your arms at your side. Nobody's going to know you're feeling weird about it because it looks fine. It looks normal. In fact, that's probably the best way it would look. Don't put your hands in front of you. Don't put your hands behind you. Don't hold something and wave it around. Just stand there. That's what we did our very first time in the training that we went through for presenting. And as it turns out, that whole process was able to give me skills that allowed me to be a company spokesperson, to work as a technical marketing manager, to literally travel the world going from place to place and talking to people. And I have been in rooms of thousands where we've done presentations. I've been in a room of 5 people doing presentations. They're both effectively the same. It's about the same. And as it turns out, it actually helps do live streams too. So these are skills you acquire over time. In fact, if you go back and look at my early training videos, I've done this recently, cringeworthy. I hate them. There's things that I notice. There are verbal crutches. I still use a number of verbal crutches, but that's okay. It's not extensive, and it's comfortable to me. There are things that I would do or say or produce or edit in a certain way that I prefer doing differently now. So it's one of those where you're learning over time. So if you feel that you're not good at speaking, that's okay. You will get better at speaking, and the more you do it, as it turns out, the better off it's going to be. There's that odd statistic they always bring up, whether it's true or not. It's at least interesting to talk about, where people, if they were able to talk about what things do they fear the most. You know, at the top of the list, public speaking is what most people fear the most. Secondly is death. People fear death. So if you interpret those statistics, people at a funeral will be much more comfortable if they were in the casket than if they were speaking at the funeral. So that's one of those that makes you think that, okay, maybe I'm overdoing or overthinking the speaking part. Because once you get a good flow going, a good process, you know how to prepare, you know how to address, how to stand, how to interact with people. It's the same over and over and over again. And I don't think I'm necessarily more or less personable, interactive with people. I don't know that I'm better or not than I used to be, but at least I know how to speak to people, and it does open up doors for you. And the better you are with communicating in IT, the more options for jobs you will have. So I think that's another part of it. If you're someone who's thinking of doing that, you're more than welcome to send me a note. If you're interested in the training I went through, I can tell you more about that there. That was another one. I didn't pay for that. The company sent me to that training to be able to make that happen. There's people everywhere that can help you with courses like that. And there's a lot of free stuff on the YouTube that talks about how to present, how to stand in front of people, how to prepare your materials, what slides should look like, what your slideware should do for you. And there's a lot of kitschy things that people will do. I've been in presentations where the person presenting put one word on the slide, and they would talk to that slide for 10 minutes, and then they would go to the next slide, and there was one word on the slide. People, we talk about, are we showing the right things? Are we talking about the right things? Are we demonstrating the right things? I've modified those ideas of what to show into the presentations you see on YouTube today, and they've been modified and presented probably in a more wordy way than I would do if I was in front of a live group of people. But when you're training on YouTube, it's different. It's different than being in a room. I think you would agree with that. So it requires a different approach and a different way to get information across. It's YouTube. I got you for 5 minutes. How can I get this information to you as quickly, efficiently, and simply as possible? And so there's a whole process I go through when building these slides so that what am I going to say? Let's put it on the slide in a way that can be properly moved over into some notes in case someone English is not their first language. They want to use this content later to learn from. That's why the slides are created in a particular style. So that's another example of it's different depending on what you do. And you're the one who's going to need to understand those nuances and put together the type of presentation that makes sense for who you're talking to. So that's where I would focus and working through those. So I think that's a good place to go. Absolutely. All right. Well, that kind of brings us. We've been doing this for a couple of 2.5 hours, so I think that's a great place to kind of put a tack in it for the moment. Put a stake in the ground, and we'll come revisit that. We've had quite a study group this time through. Thank you for being here in our first hour in the Q&A. We learned what the F connector was. That's a banner day, right? We were able to go through that. And we have one of these study groups next month or next week. Come on back for the Security Plus study group next week. And then next month is the Network Plus study group. All of these are available on the YouTube immediately afterwards, so you can't miss it. The replay will be there anytime you'd like to get to it. And there's links on the Professor Messer website as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. We have such a good time doing this. And also, thank you for your continued support of the Professor Messer website. I just don't say it enough that we would not be able to do this without you. You're the one that makes this happen, and we are awfully thankful for that. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.